Hey guys, tonight we ease into the fog of dawn, not the grand kind that rolls off mountaintops in movies, but the thin, clinging kind that wets your sleeves and smells faintly of mildew and boiled millet. You're in a rural province of medieval Japan, and the horizon's still blue-black with the leftovers of night. What most people don't realize is that being a samurai didn't always mean swords drawn and poetry written in blood. No. Sometimes it meant waiting for fog to clear, for orders to arrive, for someone more important than you to decide your fate. You're expected to be a warrior, but also a servant, a bureaucrat, a scholar, and when summoned, an executioner. You probably won't survive this story. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The cold clings to your toes through the slats in the wooden floor. The house creaks like it's warning you, though you're used to that by now. You wake not with an alarm, but with your body already anticipating the day, a thrum of tension behind your eyes, a knot in the back of your shoulders. You slept with your head on your arm, the tatami mat leaving a faint woven pattern across your cheek. Outside, the servants stir. One is boiling barley tea. Another stokes the coals that failed in the night. A child coughs in the next room, and you pretend not to hear. You are a samurai supposedly, yet here you are, scrubbing your own feet, checking for lice, hoping no one notices how little rice is left in the family storehouse. Your fingers move methodically as you dress, but your mind stays elsewhere. It flits toward your dream from last night, a horse with no eyes galloping through fire, and then jolts to the quiet dread that has followed you for weeks. You've received the order. You're to report by first light to your lord's regional outpost, where troops are being assembled. That's all the letter said. It didn't specify whether you'd be guarding a road, settling a land dispute, or storming a rebel outpost. It didn't mention whether you'd come back. You read it once, twice, folded it along the original crease, and tucked it into your sleeve. You haven't told your mother. You haven't told your wife. You figure silence is the most merciful lie. By now, you're squatting beside the family altar. You light the incense, bow twice, clap once, and press your hands together. You whisper your father's name. He died from a cough, not a sword, but that doesn't make him less of a warrior. He'd served a minor lord during the Tenbun era, back when feudal lines blurred like ink in water. You've heard the stories how he rode with a quiver of arrows and a bag of dried beans. How he once slept in a tree for 3 days to ambush a tax caravan. How he gave away his share of the plunder to spare a farmer's family from famine. Stories soften over time. You wonder what stories they'll tell about you. Maybe none. Maybe that's better. As you step outside, the sky is soft gray and the wind smells like smoke. There's a pile of old firewood by the fence that no one's bothered to stack. A single chicken pecks at the ground like it's solving a mystery. You pause. The scene is absurdly calm. You wish something would disrupt it just so you wouldn't feel the guilt of leaving it behind. Historians still argue whether most samurai of your status truly believed in Bushido back then, or if it was a philosophy reverse-engineered by peacetime scribes long after the blood stopped flowing. You can't afford to wonder. You need that code. Without it, you're just a man with a blade and too much silence in his heart. Your travel bag hangs light over your shoulder. You packed it last night, rice balls, dried sardines, a rag for wounds you hope not to get. The family crest on your sleeves is faded, barely visible. You were born into a lower-ranking samurai clan, no grand estates, no servants beyond your cousin's boy who mostly just hides during storms. But you wear the name with quiet pride, not the loud kind that demands bows, but the stubborn kind that refuses to vanish. Funny thing is, you've trained your whole life for death, how to greet it, how to cause it, how to avoid disgrace before it, but no one ever trained you how to say goodbye to your child. She's still sleeping, limbs tangled in a blanket, cheeks puffy. She's 4. You consider waking her just for a moment, just to press your forehead to hers, but then you don't. Instead, you whisper her name to the door frame and hope the wind carries it back. As you begin walking toward the regional outpost, your feet crunch softly on the packed dirt road. A line of ants moves beside you, all in eerie sync. The road cuts through a thin field bordered by reeds and ditches that have long forgotten their purpose. You pass by the neighbor's millet plot. Its rows are crooked now. The old man who tended it died last season from a snake bite, or loneliness. You nod toward his empty hut, just in case he's still watching. You keep moving. The sun hasn't quite cracked the hills yet, but you see the glow peeking through the tree line. Your boots are damp from morning dew, and your calves itch where the leggings rub. A few birds call out, but most keep quiet. Maybe they know better. There's a shrine half buried in moss at the bend in the road. You remember placing a stone there as a child? After you saw a fox vanish behind the trees? They say the fox spirits watch travelers and trick the arrogant. You step carefully past. No need to invite commentary from the invisible. You're alone for most of the walk, but eventually you spot another figure ahead, another samurai, likely summoned like you. He walks with a slight limp and has a wrap bundle on his back. You don't greet him. Neither of you want to break the solitude. You walk in tandem for a while, breathing the same morning, neither acknowledging the other. It's strangely comforting. At one point, you notice he's humming something under his breath, a lullaby, maybe for a child, maybe for himself. As you round the last bend, the outpost comes into view, a square compound of thatched roofs and black pine fencing, still sleepy in the morning haze. A few guards stand outside, spears in hand, eyelids heavy. One scratches his neck with the dull end of his blade. You show the letter and they wave you in. No questions, no ceremony, just a nod. You're not special. You're just next. Inside the outpost, the world becomes quieter, but heavier. The stillness isn't peace. It's a thick blanket of anticipation, like a crowd holding its breath before a duel. You're led to a small stable yard behind the main barracks, where a tired-looking groom hands you a lacquered armor chest and gestures toward the corner stall without speaking. The box creaks open like a coffin, and inside is the familiar glint of your gear iron and leather, faded crimson lacing, the scent of old sweat and camphor. The act of suiting up is ritual, not routine. Each piece binds you tighter to who you're expected to be. You start with the underrobe, rough against your skin, followed by the padded jacket that smells faintly of mold. The breastplate comes next, then the shoulder guards that tug slightly as you raise your arms. You struggle a bit with the helmet strap, it always sticks. You pretend not to notice how your fingers tremble. Every layer you add doesn't protect you, it replaces you. You stop being a man. You become a silhouette made for someone else's war. Your reflection in the water basin isn't what you remember. The chin is yours, and the small scar near your eyebrow, but everything else feels borrowed. The armor is heavier than it used to be, or maybe you're just more aware of the weight. It presses down with memories you never had time to process, like the time you watched your uncle die, not in battle, but after slipping on frozen steps, breaking his neck while carrying ceremonial spears. No glory, no witness, just cracked wood and silence. The armor didn't save him either. You wipe your face and wonder whether it's better to die unnoticed or die performing. Historians still argue whether the samurai of the Sengoku period were more motivated by loyalty or fear of dishonor. You suspect it's neither. Most of you are motivated by pressure, the slow crush of being watched by ghosts and grandfathers and hungry lords who never bleed. Once fully armored, you walk out into the training yard. Dozens of other men do the same. Some you know by name, others you've seen only in passing, in markets or parades. A few look younger than you remember. A few look impossibly older. One man with a crooked nose gives you a nod. He's the type who collects debts and makes origami for children, in that order. You nod back. The silence between samurai isn't cold. It's just heavily packed with the knowledge that anyone here might not make it past sundown. You glance down the line and see your childhood friend Noboru, now a captain. He catches your gaze and gives a slight smirk, the kind that says, "We're both thinking about that time we got in trouble for dueling with tree branches instead of attending calligraphy class." The nostalgia is oddly brutal. A whistle blows, and everyone snaps to attention. The general steps out. You've never spoken to him, but you know his face from temple wall paintings and banner scrolls. He wears no helmet, just a small topknot, and the expression of a man who's seen too many funerals to care about names. He doesn't greet you. He doesn't thank you. He merely gestures to a table behind him, where scribes distribute orders. You file forward. When your name is called, you take your slip. It's written in brushstroke ink, smudged slightly. Your assignment is a forward formation escort along the northern ridge. 3 days march, high risk. You're to rendezvous with a second unit from the Takeda clan. No additional details, no mention of return. As you step back in line, your thoughts begin to scatter. You try to focus on practicalities, how many meals you'll need, whether the ridge is muddy this season, if there's cover from archers, but none of it settles. You can't think clearly because the armor now itches at your collarbone and your stomach knots like a rope. You haven't eaten since yesterday. You chew on a piece of pickled plum from your sleeve pouch, letting the sourness distract you from the thought that this could be the last time you suit up. Then again, you've thought that before. Every campaign feels like the final one, until it isn't. In the stables, your horse waits. His name is Coma, and he's older now, knees stiffer, eyes clouded, but he still recognizes your voice when you call. You place your hand on his neck and feel him lean slightly toward you. That warmth is a small mercy. You saddle him carefully, securing the blanket, the stirrups, the small leather pouch that carries spare cord, flint, and the little Netsuke charm your daughter carved from wood. It's shaped like a turtle. She said turtles don't rush, and neither should you. You didn't tell her that on the battlefield. Hesitation can kill. You just smiled and tied it to your saddle strap. You mount up as others do the same, and the yard slowly fills with a clatter of hooves and armor plates brushing together. A few men murmur prayers under their breath. One begins to hum a low, tuneless sound that gets under your skin in a strangely soothing way. You all begin to file out through the east gate, moving single file through the narrow pass that leads toward the ridge. The wind picks up. It carries the smell of pine needles and distant smoke. Somewhere in the distance, you think you hear laughter, but it's probably birds. The road out is quiet, except for the rhythm of hooves on packed earth. You pass shrines, abandoned rice terraces, and fields that haven't been plowed in years. The land feels neglected, as if even the farmers are waiting for someone else to decide whether it's safe to plant again. One patch of trees is scorched black, a reminder of the last skirmish in this area. They say it was over a boundary marker no larger than a sandal. That's how most wars start. Someone misplaced a rock, and someone else died defending it. As you ride, your mind wanders to the armor again. Each piece is tied in precise laces, the dew, the hay date, the sewed. Together, they form a kind of carapace that turns a man into a beetle made for war. What most don't realize is that armor like yours isn't just for battle, it's for display. Your lord chooses the color of your lacing. He decides the family crest you wear. Even your sword isn't truly yours. It belongs to your lineage, and when you die, it returns to your house, not your grave. The sword you clean daily, the blade you whisper to before fights, that sword will survive you. You won't survive it. By midday, you stop in a clearing to rest. A small stream cuts through the underbrush, and some men refill their canteens. You squat near a mossy stone and pull off your helmet. The breeze kisses your sweat-soaked hair, and for a moment, you feel human again. Noboru sits beside you and offers half a rice ball. You take it without speaking. It tastes like dust and salt. Think we'll be lucky, he asks. You shrug. Luck doesn't travel this far north. He laughs, not because it's funny, but because it's too late for anything else. Back on the road, the group tightens. You can feel the unspoken shift in everyone's posture. Tension blooms like frost across the line. Somewhere ahead, trouble waits. A scout returns and whispers to the captain something about movement near the ridge. You hear only fragments ambush, likely archers in the brush. Might be Takeda defectors. You grip the reins tighter. Your thighs press into Coma's sides, readying for the unknown. You breathe slowly, focus sharpens. You're now a blade, nothing more. You hear them before you see them. The steady, bone-deep thrum of war drums rolling through the ridgeline like distant thunder, getting louder with every step your horse takes. They aren't your side's drums. That much you know. Yours are sharp and clipped, signaling orders in bursts. These are slow, deliberate, meant to unsettle. You can feel the rhythm vibrating up through the reins and into your hands, like the mountain itself is muttering a warning. Coma snorts nervously, and you tighten your grip on the reins. Though your own heartbeat starts to sync with that relentless percussion, the brush thickens on either side of the path now, and you note every branch, every suspicious bend in the bamboo. Ambush country, everyone in your group spreads just slightly apart, not enough to signal panic, but enough that no one wants to be caught shoulder to shoulder if arrows come. The wind picks up, it smells like damp bark and something sour, maybe unwashed bodies, maybe fear. You've read about battles in scrolls, listened to old men recount them through sakes, but this moment, this narrowing of sound and sense was never in the lessons. It feels like your bones are being threaded with tension. The captain up front raises one hand. Everyone halts. There's no spoken order. That's the thing about being samurai. Sometimes silence is louder than speech. A scout darts forward, disappears into the brush. You adjust your helmet strap. Again, always that same fraying cord. And now, of all times, you keep your eyes fixed on the ridgeline, where the forest parts like a breath between two hills. And then, through that narrow cut, you see them silhouettes moving in a wave, armor glinting, spears upright like a forest of metal. The Takeda unit, or what's left of it, they arrive with little fanfare, just the hollow thud of hooves and the shuffle of feet dragging behind. One of their commanders, a tall man with a crescent-shaped scar across his jaw, rides up to your captain and speaks in low tones. You can't hear the words, but you can read the body language. Whatever they just learned, it wasn't good. Heads nod, shoulders stiffen, weapons shift in subtle preparation. You and your companions dismount, stretch your legs, and check your gear. Noboru is inspecting his bowstring with more care than usual, lips pressed tight. One of the younger samurai is throwing up behind a tree. No one says anything. You all know better. The Takeda men look exhausted. Some of them are bleeding from old wounds, barely scabbed over. One clutches a severed finger wrapped in cloth like a talisman. You catch a snatch of conversation between two of them. They were hit last night. Lost a third of their number. No warning. The enemy wears mixed colors. Some banners match your lord's rivals. Others are unfamiliar. Mercenaries. Maybe Ronin. Bandits dressed up like soldiers, which often makes them fight harder because they have no home to lose. There's no time for proper planning. The decision is made, both units will move together along the ridge, forming a tighter phalanx, watching for another hit. It's not strategy, it's damage control. As you remount, Koma's ears twitch backward, picking up something you don't. You whisper into his mane, not because he understands, but because you need someone to hear. Your voice cracks just slightly. Let's not die on this hill, old friend. He stomps once, as if agreeing, and you nudge him forward. The march resumes, and now the war drums have stopped. That's worse. At least when they played, you knew where the enemy was. Now, every tree could be hiding death. Your eyes dart, your breathing slows. You are both utterly calm and utterly alert. A hawk calls overhead, and every head snaps up in reflex. Someone chuckles darkly. Even the birds are spies now. It's a weak joke, but you all needed it. As the column moves, you pass by remnants of last night's skirmish, broken spears still embedded in the dirt, bloody footprints frozen in drying mud, one sandal half buried and oddly child-sized. You don't want to think about that, but your brain does anyway. Historians still argue whether battlefield formations were actually followed during these chaotic ridge conflicts, or whether they quickly devolved into individualized chaos. Judging by the state of this road, the answer seems obvious. The trees thin out near a sharp bend, and that's when the call comes, contact. You don't think, you react. You pull your blade in a single motion, wheel Koma to the side, and raise your left arm to shield your face. Arrows rain down, not many, but enough. One buries itself in a nearby trunk with a thwack. Another whistles past your ear, grazing the lacquer on your helmet. Your unit responds instantly. The front line raises shields. Archers in the rear return fire. You urge Koma into the trees for better cover, heart hammering. Through the branches, you see movement figures in mismatched armor, sprinting low with short spears. They're trying to flank. You don't wait for orders. You spur forward, slicing down toward the nearest figure. Your blade meets flesh, not bone, and the man goes down with a grunt. You don't stop to see if he's dead. Another lunges at you. You parry. Your arm jolts with the force. He tries again. You kick him in the gut, and he stumbles backward, tripping over a root. A third man approaches, but an arrow drops him mid-stride. You don't know whose it was. You don't look. There's no time. The next few minutes blur into muscle memory. You ride, slash, twist, duck. Your breathing is ragged. Your hands ache. At one point, your blade sticks in a shoulder, and you yank too hard, pulling the man with you. He clutches your leg as he falls. You push him off and feel your stomach turn. His face is no older than your own. Eyes wide in a final, stupid expression of surprise. You tell yourself not to look back, but you do. Eventually, the skirmish ebbs. The enemy retreats, vanishing into the hills like smoke through fingers. Your unit regroups. Some men are missing. Some groan on the ground. One lies very still, blood pooling beneath his cheek. Noboru has a gash on his side, but he waves it off, joking about how he always wanted a matching scar. You offer him your last piece of dried sardine. He takes it like it's gold. The Takeda captain thanks your unit without making eye contact. His voice is hollow. It sounds like he's aged 10 years since morning. You dismount again to catch your breath. Koma is lathered with sweat, chest heaving, but unharmed. You stroke his neck and whisper nonsense to soothe him. Around you, the others tend to wounds, gather arrows, and count heads. No one speaks about the dead. Not yet. That comes later, when you have less to do and too much time to remember. You slump beside a tree, resting your head against the bark. It's cool, wet, and smells like sap. For a moment, everything is still. Your ears ring from adrenaline, and your fingers twitch involuntarily. You close your eyes. You see the boy's face again. You try to replace it with your daughter's, but they blur. You open your eyes. Insects buzz lazily in the underbrush. A butterfly lands on your shin plate. The absurdity of it makes you smile. Maybe not everything in this place is trying to kill you. You let out a long breath you didn't know you were holding. One skirmish survived. How many more you don't know, but for now, you're still breathing. The path narrows again, winding upward along the stony back of the ridge, and every step your horse takes knocks a pebble loose that skitters down the slope with a sound too sharp, too loud. You'd expect the aftermath of combat to feel like some kind of release, but it doesn't. If anything, you're tighter now, like your muscles have learned how to shrink themselves around fear. Your mouth is dry, but you don't want to drink. You want to keep that sour taste of vinegar and copper in your throat, just in case it helps you stay awake. The ridge curves inland, revealing a distant river that slices through the forest like a silver ribbon. It's beautiful, and you hate it for being beautiful. You wonder, fleetingly, if you'll ever see it again from the other side. The squad moves slowly, boots and hooves sinking into the soft moss that coats the highland path. One man hums under his breath, the same haunting rhythm as earlier, and you realize it's not a tune, it's a breathing technique. Something he was taught as a child to calm nerves during practice duels. You try it. It helps. Barely. You find yourself thinking of a scroll you read years ago, an old manual from a Kyoto monastery that described the proper mental state for facing death. Clear like glass, still like a pond, fierce like lightning. You laughed at the time, imagining a man being all those things at once. But now, riding along this trail with death behind you and more ahead, the paradox feels oddly useful. Historians still argue whether samurai truly trained their minds for death, or if that ideal was more poetic than practical. You're starting to think it was both. The poetry was there to distract you, while the practical part took over like a hand held gently over your eyes, while someone tied your armor tighter. By midday, the heat presses down in a wet blanket. Your scalp itches under the helmet, and your back aches from the weight of the armor. You'd give anything to take it off, but no one does. Not here. Not now. The group stops near a copse of trees to let the horses rest, and you find yourself sitting cross-legged in the shade, unbuckling your gauntlets and flexing your fingers like you're trying to remember they're part of you. Someone passes a canteen, and you sip. The water is warm and tastes faintly of iron, but it's better than thirst. Noboru leans against a tree beside you, wiping blood, his or someone else's, from his blade with a strip of cloth. You think we're halfway to whatever this is, he asks. You shrug. Depends on how long they let us live. You both chuckle at the same time. It's a hollow sound, but not unfriendly. Not far off, a younger samurai sits by himself, sharpening a blade that doesn't need sharpening. His eyes are glassy, and you can tell his mind is stuck looping something from earlier. You know that look. You had it once after your first real kill. It doesn't leave quickly. Some say it never leaves at all. You stand, walk over, and offer him a dried plum. He blinks, hesitates, then takes it. You don't say anything. He doesn't either. But the gesture is a kind of thread that keeps him tethered to the now. Later, when things get worse, and they always do, maybe he'll remember this moment, and it'll keep him from unraveling. Or maybe not. There are no guarantees out here. The rest break ends quickly. The sun is slipping westward, shadows lengthening, and the trail grows steep. You dismount and lead Koma by the reins, his hooves careful on the uneven ground. You reach a lookout point where the valley spreads out below, in dusky colors, smoke rising in the distance, probably from villages or signal fires. There's movement on the far side. Your captain raises a spyglass and stares for a long time. When he lowers it, his mouth is tight. We're not the only ones heading that way. He mutters. That's all he says. No one presses him. The trail descends again, more rapidly now, winding through a dense cedar forest where the light can't seem to reach. The air is cooler, but damp. You hear water trickling somewhere below, and the rhythmic croak of frogs begins to replace birdsong. The forest feels ancient, older than swords, older than lords, like it remembers every man who's ever passed through with death on his shoulder. There's a rusted bell nailed to a post at a fork in the path. No one knows why it's there. Some say it marks the edge of a haunted battlefield. Others claim it was once used to warn travelers about bandits. You pass beneath it without touching it. Others do the same. No one needs another ghost tagging along tonight. Further down the slope, you reach an old encampment, abandoned but still reeking of old fires and urine. A few half-burned logs remain in the pits, and a makeshift palisade has half collapsed in the underbrush. You decide to stop here for the night. There's no official command, just the collective decision of tired horses and sagging shoulders. You help tie Koma to a tree, rub him down with a cloth, and feed him from your pouch. He nudges your hand when it's empty. Me too, you whisper. You find a spot near the edge of the clearing and remove only your helmet and gauntlets, reluctant to loosen too much. The ground is uneven and smells of mildew, but it's somewhere to sit. A few fires are lit, carefully shielded from view. Cooked rice and fish are passed around, and you eat without tasting. It fills you. That's enough. Later, as the camp settles, someone starts reciting a poem softly, under his breath, but the rhythm carries. It's an old tanka about cherry blossoms falling on armor. You close your eyes. You try to sleep. You fail. Instead, you lie back and listen to the wind sifting through the trees, the distant cough of a fellow soldier, the creak of a saddle being checked. Again, the night presses in like a heavy cloak. You pull your scarf higher around your neck and think of home. You picture your wife's hands folding laundry on the porch, the sound of your daughter chasing the neighbor's cat, the old pine tree that drops needles like a lazy monk scattering scriptures. You imagine the way sunlight hits the porch just before noon, and for a moment, you're not here. You're there. But the image slips. Always, it slips. The forest doesn't let you pretend for long. A twig snaps somewhere to your left. You sit up instantly, hand on your blade, heart racing. It's just a deer. You think, probably, maybe. You don't sleep that night. Not really. You just close your eyes and drift through pieces of thought, fragments of memory, and half-finished prayers. There's no rest here, only waiting. At some point before dawn, a mist begins to roll in thin at first, then thickening, cloaking everything in a hush that feels sacred. It dampens sound, softens edges, and makes even fear seem like it's whispering instead of screaming. You rise, stretch, and don your gear again. Everything is damp. The mist seeps into cloth, into the gaps between plates. It makes the world feel weightless and far away, like you're walking through someone else's dream. Noboru joins you by the horses, chewing on a piece of root to wake himself. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. As the squad assembles, the captain walks through and nods once. That's the signal. You mount up, the mist curling around Koma's legs like silk. The path ahead is invisible, and that almost makes it easier. If you can't see where you're going, you can pretend it's somewhere better, maybe toward peace, maybe toward death. You tighten your grip on the reins and lean forward, urging Koma on. The others follow, their forms blurring into the fog like fading ink on old parchment. You ride forward into the mist. You ride forward, knowing that eventually the fog will lift. But whether it reveals enemies, allies, or the final shape of your fate, you do not know. You just ride. The mist doesn't lift, it deepens. It curls into your ears, your sleeves, the joints in your armor. It's not just water vapor. It feels like memory, like the smoke of dreams that never made it into full sleep. Koma's hooves make almost no sound now, muffled by wet leaves and the soft carpet of old needles. The rest of the unit stretches out around you in a long, silent line. Barely visible figures moving like ghosts. No one speaks. Voices would feel out of place here. Too loud. Too alive. You hear the occasional creak of a saddle or the muted clink of armor shifting. But otherwise, it's as if you've all agreed to dissolve into the forest. You start to lose sense of time. Has it been minutes or an hour? You can't tell. The path winds endlessly, climbing and descending without warning, as if the mountain can't make up its mind whether it wants to help or hinder you. You ride, not because you know where you're going, but because you trust that someone, somewhere, does. Or maybe you just hope the horse remembers. Eventually, the mist parts just enough to reveal an opening, a flat patch of clearing where an old shrine once stood. You can see the crumbled stone base, overgrown and leaning, with one wooden post still standing, draped in rotting prayer papers. The air shifts slightly, and the scent of ash reaches you. Old ash. This place burned. Not recently, but not long ago either. You dismount, drawn toward the ruins like a moth, unsure whether it's seeing firelight or memory. The rest of the squad halts behind you, and for once no one tells you to move on. They feel it too, that strange pull, that uneasy stillness. Noboru steps beside you and mutters, "This was the place, wasn't it? That rebellion?" You nod. You've heard the story. A village here refused to pay taxes during a drought. The local lord sent troops. They set fire to everything, including the shrine. No records remain of the villagers' names, just this silence. You walk slowly past the ruins, half expecting to hear voices. You don't, but the absence is heavy. It's in the way the air presses against your chest, the way the leaves don't rustle even when the wind touches them. Koma snorts softly as you lead him through. You whisper a small apology into the space, just in case anyone or anything is listening. Some of the younger samurai make small offerings. A coin, a folded slip of paper. One man pours a few drops of sake onto the earth. You don't carry sake, so you untie your daughter's turtle charm and lay it at the base of the stone. It hurts more than you thought it would, but you leave it anyway. You remount, and the column moves forward. The mist thins as you exit the shrine's clearing, and the forest lightens to that peculiar shade of gray-green that feels like morning even when it isn't. The path grows steeper, and the trees more sparse. Eventually, you reach the top of a ridge overlooking a wide valley. From this height, you can see it all: the winding river, the tilled fields near its banks, the low smoke from small farmhouses, and there, far in the distance, you spot movement. Banners. Too far to read, but definitely not friendly. The captain raises his hand, and a scout departs immediately, dashing down a side path like a fox with a destination no one else understands. You sit there on your horse, staring at the valley like it's a painting someone else made, and you were never meant to step into it. The wind is stronger here. It pulls at your sleeves, whistles through the gaps in your armor. A few of the men dismount to check equipment, eat something, pass around water. You remain seated, scanning the land below. The enemy is setting up camp tents, palisades, fire pits. It's organized, which means they're not retreating. They're waiting, and you'll probably be the greeting party. A small bird lands on the tip of your lance, then flits off just as quickly. You wonder if that's a sign. Probably not. But maybe. Historians still argue whether samurai paid attention to omens or just used them to justify the actions they already intended to take. You suspect it's both. Humans are good at making patterns out of fear. After some time, the scout returns, face pale, breathing sharp. He kneels before the captain and speaks low. The only word you catch is numbers. Too many. You already know what that means. You'll be the distraction, the feint, the poor fools sent to poke the hornet's nest while someone else circles behind. Classic maneuver, the kind of thing they write about in strategy books, as if the people sent forward are just tokens and not men with families and horses and odd dreams that don't make sense in daylight. Orders are given quickly. The mood tightens. Noboru looks at you and mouths the word again, with a raised eyebrow. You both know the dance by now. You descend the ridge as dust begins to creep across the sky, and everything below turns bronze and blue. The shadows lengthen, the air cools. The camp is set in a narrow glade near the river's bend, shielded from the road. Fires are lit low. Food is minimal, just enough to warm the blood. You eat half a rice ball and give the other half to a limping dog that's wandered into camp. No one questions where it came from. No one ever does. The dog eats and curls up by a log, already asleep before you're finished chewing. Lucky thing. Night falls without a sound. No owls call, no insects buzz. Even the river sounds like it's holding its breath. You don't sleep. Again. You sit near the edge of the firelight, whetstone in hand, pretending to sharpen a blade that's already fine. It gives your hands something to do. Your thoughts drift, as they always do when there's nothing to drown them out. You think about your grandfather's stories, how he used to claim he'd survived 3 wars by always sleeping with one boot on. You remember thinking he was invincible. Then one winter, he died slipping on an icy stone step. You remember staring at the step afterward like it had murdered him on purpose. Someone in the camp begins to sing, low, mournful. You don't recognize the words, but the melody sounds like mourning. Or maybe it's just tired. You hum along, quietly, until it ends. And then, silence again. You lie back, eyes open, watching the stars blink into place. One of them moves. No, it's a firefly. You smile, just for a second. Then you sit up. No point trying to sleep. Before dawn, the captain moves through camp with a small lantern. He doesn't speak, just touches shoulders, one by one. Wake. It's time. You rise, stretch, and armor up again. Every buckle, every knot, done slowly, deliberately. You want to feel each piece. You want to remember this moment, just in case it's the last one you ever do fully awake. You lead Koma from the brush, mount up, and wait. The squad gathers, no speeches, no rallying cries, just movement. The quiet kind that means commitment. You ride out under the fading stars, the road barely visible. The plan is simple. Draw their attention, break their line, fall back before they can surround you. Simple, but deadly. You volunteer for the forward flank, not because you're brave, because you're tired of waiting. You'd rather meet the moment than have it find you hiding. The rest line up behind, bows ready, lances up. You see the sun beginning to warm the edge of the hills, and you whisper to no one in particular, "Let's not die today." It's not a prayer, just a possibility. The first thing you notice is the silence breaking not with noise, but with absence. The kind of shift where you suddenly realize the birds have stopped, the trees aren't moving, and even your own horse has gone stiff beneath you. Koma's ears flick back, then forward again. Sensing what your human nerves are just beginning to register, the enemy is already awake. You're not approaching a sleeping camp. You're riding toward one that has been watching you come, one heartbeat at a time. The dew on the grass glints faintly in the rising sun, but it offers no warmth. If anything, it feels like the kind of morning that legends are built on, not because of glory, but because somebody somewhere will need to explain why so many people didn't come back. The forward line fans out slightly, giving space for archers and spear bearers. You adjust your grip on the reins, exhale through your nose, and brace yourself for the part no one ever gets used to the weight before the clash. The enemy doesn't scream. They don't shout or blow horns or chant their banners. They simply rise from the brush in waves, like ink spreading through water. You count at least 3 banner crests none you recognize. Mercenaries? Probably. The kind who don't fight for ideals. Just enough rice and silver to make it through the season. They come fast, low, and quiet. A tactic meant to destabilize samurai trained for grand charges and gallant duels. But this is something else. You raise your sword, not to look noble, but to brace for the impact. The first volley of arrows misses, thankfully. Maybe too early, maybe a bluff, but it signals the start. Your horse jerks forward without waiting. Responding to the tension in your legs, Koma charges into the fray, hooves pounding the mud as the world erupts into motion. The first man you meet is shorter than you, missing part of his left ear, and wielding a crude yari. You parry with your blade, twist left, and strike. The sword bites deep into his collar. He drops without a cry. There's no time to check if he's dead. A second fighter lunges at your side. You pivot Koma sharply, and your blade swings wide, catching nothing but air. Behind you, a fellow rider screams. You don't turn to look. Your pulse is hammering against your ribs like it's trying to get out. The fighting becomes chaos. Your unit tries to hold formation, but the terrain uneven, full of hidden roots and broken brush scatters you like leaves in wind. You see Noboru out of the corner of your eye, crouched low with a spear, moving more like a wildcat than a soldier. He meets an attacker and thrusts, clean and fast, then ducks behind a tree. Another samurai, one of the Takeda remnants, crashes down from his horse, bleeding from the face, but gets up and charges again. It's not strategy anymore. It's instinct. And you're surprised by how much of it lives in your body even when your mind is screaming. You kill again and again. You don't remember how many. Their faces blur. Their blades blur. The only thing that feels real is your breathing. Inhale through your teeth. Exhale hard through your nose. You count the breaths like beads on a monk's rosary. 1, 2, 3. Reset. 1, 2, 3. Reset. Your right arm starts to ache. Your left leg burns from a cut you didn't see happen. You keep going. There's a pause in the violence, maybe 5 seconds. Maybe less, where you and another fighter just stare at each other across the mess of a fallen log. His face is painted, not decoratively, but with streaks of charcoal. He looks like something pulled from a shrine's nightmare mural. He doesn't blink. You do. He charges. You step back, swing, and catch his side. He falls, clawing at the earth. You turn away. You can't afford to watch him die. It'll make you hesitate the next time. You know that now. Eventually, the horn sounds the signal to pull back. You didn't even know it had been decided. Someone made the call, and you obey. You grab Koma's reins, leap up into the saddle, and retreat with the others down the narrow trail that brought you here. Arrows follow, but the trees are thick, and luck is kinder this time. You duck low as one glances off your shoulder plate. Behind you, a younger samurai fails to duck. The arrow lodges in his neck. He falls without a sound. You bite the inside of your cheek and ride harder. The squad regroups in a clearing half a mile back. The wounded lie sprawled in the brush, some moaning, others quiet. The dead are counted, but no names are spoken yet. Noboru collapses next to you, panting, blood on his jaw. "We were bait," he says, not with anger, just exhausted confirmation. You nod. It's not news. It was always going to be this way. Did it work, you ask? He shrugs. Still alive. Aren't we? It's not really an answer. You find water in a shallow pool nearby and kneel beside it, cupping the cold into your palms, splashing your face. Blood smears. You're not sure whose, maybe yours. You wash until your reflection returns. It doesn't look like you anymore. You look like someone older, someone tired of beginnings. Historians still argue whether samurai felt grief during battle or whether they compartmentalized it entirely. If they didn't grieve then, they must have grieved forever afterward. There's too much in your chest to carry back home. As you sit against a tree, eating what's left of your rice, you hear footsteps. The captain approaches, unreadable as always. He surveys the survivors, the wounded, the broken helmets. He doesn't apologize, he doesn't commend. He simply says, "You did what was required." Then he walks away. The words echo longer than any war cry. You did what was required. That's all you ever do. That's all anyone remembers. Not the details, not the moments, just that you did what someone else required of you. Later, while tending your horse, you find a small gash on his side. Not deep, but still bleeding. You clean it carefully, using the last of your cloth bandage. Koma stands still the entire time. You whisper thanks, not because you expect him to understand, but because you need to say it out loud. He saved your life, whether he knows it or not. Maybe he knows. Maybe he's been doing this longer than you have. Maybe he's wiser. Dusk again, another fire, another meal that tastes like duty. You sit with Noboru and two others, sharing silence the way men like you always have. No stories, no jokes, just the occasional grunt of acknowledgement. One of them hums that same tuneless song. It's starting to feel like part of you, a rhythm you'll carry long after this is over. You stare into the fire, watching the embers flicker like stars trying to escape. You wonder what your daughter is doing, whether she's drawing again, whether she's started forgetting your voice. You imagine her sitting at the porch with your wife, playing with the neighbor's cat. You hold on to that image like a sword hilt, fingers tightening until your knuckles ache, because that more than honor, more than pride is the reason you survive. Before sleep takes you, if it ever does, you write a single line in the dirt beside your mat, not for anyone else to read, just to say it. Still here, you don't know why it helps, but it does. Morning doesn't arrive with sunlight. It arrives with dampness, seeping into your bones like you've been left in a cold bucket overnight. Your joints creak before your armor does, and you feel older than you have any right to. The camp stirs slowly, as if waking from a fever dream. No one talks. There's a new kind of quiet now. Not the eerie stillness of anticipation, but the numb silence of those who know too much. Your body moves on its own, folding bedding, tightening straps, adjusting the tilt of your helmet, as if you didn't just spend the night staring at the stars and asking them to leave you alone. You glance at the younger samurai. He's still here, eyes swollen, but no longer hollow. He sharpens his blade with purpose now. Maybe that's something. You rise with the rest, a tide of weary men climbing into the saddle, not because they're ready, but because readiness no longer matters. You ride along the riverbank, now swollen from last night's unseen rain. It moves quickly, biting at the banks, whispering things only rivers know. Your reflection shivers in the surface, and you catch a glimpse of someone you recognize only vaguely, mouth tight, brows set, eyes always scanning. You've become that kind of man, not bitter, just sharpened, like a knife that's been honed too many times and now cuts without thinking. Koma steps carefully through the muck, each hoof making a low schloop sound that you feel in your spine. It's oddly comforting, like a rhythm that reminds you, yes, you're still here, still moving forward, even if you stopped hoping for much. Ahead, the captain raises a hand, and the column halts. A pair of scouts returns from the trees, faces drawn tight. They speak quickly, and though you can't hear all the words, you pick up enough another skirmish site. Bodies. No clear side. Someone's throat slit with surgical precision. The kind of work that doesn't belong to amateurs. Ronin, maybe, or worse, deserters. The type who no longer care who wins, only that they take something from someone before they vanish again. You hear one of the scouts mention a name, Mount He. That gets your attention. The others stiffen too. It's a place soaked in ghosts. The mountain was once sacred, home to warrior monks, scholars, and quiet thunder. Now it's more like a scar on the land, burned, rebuilt, and burned again. You've never been there, but you've heard the stories how the ashes still rise in certain seasons, how travelers go silent without meaning to when they pass its slopes. Historians still argue whether the destruction of the Great Temple was a political necessity or a cultural tragedy, but among men like you, it's simply referred to as the place where the gods stopped answering, and now you're headed toward it. The road narrows as it begins its climb. Pine trees lean in from both sides, casting long shadows that feel more like fingers than branches. The sun barely filters through, turning everything a dusky green. The smell changes to less of wet grass, more of iron and age. Koma's ears twitch often, though he makes no sound. You speak to him under your breath, more for your own nerves than his. The others do the same, muttering to their blades, to their ancestors, to the memory of those who walked this road before. It's not prayer, it's habit, the kind of superstition you pretend you've outgrown, but find yourself returning to when the path gets steep and the trees too quiet. As the incline sharpens, the path grows treacherous. Loose stones, fallen branches, and the ever-present mist make progress slow and twitchy. You dismount to lead Koma by hand, every step careful, deliberate. Your legs ache in ways that feel like warning signs, but you press on. A few men slip, catch themselves on roots, mutter curses or apologies depending on who's listening. One loses his footing entirely and twists his ankle. He grits his teeth, refuses help, and limps forward alone. No one questions it. Everyone knows that being left behind here is a worse fate than limping. You finally reach a clearing near the lower slope of Mount Hiei, and it hits you all at once, the silence. Not the typical forest hush, but a thick, suffocating kind. The birds are gone. The insects, too. Even the wind seems hesitant. You dismount and step into the clearing, boots sinking slightly into the mossy ground. There are no ruins here, no visible scars of battle, but something lingers, a presence, like the air is holding a breath it's afraid to release. One of the older samurai bows his head and places his palm to the ground, still warm. He whispers, "You don't ask what that means. You just nod." You're ordered to set up a perimeter. No campfires, no loud voices, just a quiet wait while the captain and a few scouts check the higher paths. You sit on a fallen log and unwrap a rice bundle. It's stale, but you eat it anyway. Your hands are starting to cramp from gripping your sword too tightly earlier, and you flex them slowly, watching the tendons shift like ropes under your skin. Noboru sits beside you, not speaking. He doesn't need to. You both know this kind of stillness never lasts. Something will break it soon. It always does. Hours pass, maybe more. The mist thickens. You begin to see shapes that aren't their faces in trees, movements in peripheral vision. You know it's just your mind playing games. At least, that's what you tell yourself. The scouts return with little news. No sign of enemy camps, but evidence of recent movement. Footprints, bits of cloth, a crushed sandal with blood on the strap. They found a shrine further up burned out. Altar blackened, offering still smoldering. The captain says nothing, just gives the order to move again at first light. You all nod. No one questions him. That night, you don't try to sleep. You just lie beneath the low branches, eyes open, staring into the fog that settled over the ground, like breath held just above the earth. Koma stands nearby, eyes half-lidded, but awake. You reach out and place your hand on his leg, just to feel something steady. He doesn't flinch. That small mercy is more comforting than anything else you could ask for. Around midnight, there's movement. Not an attack, just presence. You sit up, heart suddenly thudding, and see them figures walking through the mist. Pale robes, no armor, no sound. Monks, or something dressed like them. No faces. You blink. They're gone. You don't mention it to anyone the next morning. Neither does Noboru. But you catch him looking into the woods with that same expression, the kind that says, "Did you see what I saw? Or are we both just broken?" The morning arrives slow and gray. The mist hasn't lifted. It probably never will. You armor up again. Your movement slower now, like you're dragging yourself into a shell that no longer fits. You ride without speaking, following the captain up the narrow path toward the heart of the ridge. The climb is brutal, the path almost vertical in places, but you press on, because pressing on is what you've been trained to do. Not survive, just move forward. Near the summit, the trees break, revealing a flat plateau where a single cedar tree stands. Beneath it, scattered rocks, blackened from fire, and something else, something glinting, metal. You approach and find what's left of an armor set, not new, rusted, worn, and covered in moss. A helmet with a shattered crest, a breastplate cracked down the center. It looks ceremonial, but used. Whoever wore it did not go quietly. You kneel beside it, not sure why, and place your hand on the chest plate. It's cold, but not empty. You feel something inside it like memory or warning. You rise. The others have already moved on. You hesitate. Just for a moment. You whisper, "We're still walking," to the silent armor. Then you turn and follow the sound of hooves into the mist, leaving behind the echoes of those who faced this mountain and didn't return. By the time you descend the far side of Mount He, the world feels thinner, less like a place you can touch, and more like something you're passing through. The mist has loosened, but not left. It trails behind you like a cloak you can't remove. The path is rockier now, the trees denser, and the air smells sharply of ironwood and wet moss. The squad is quieter than usual. No one asks what anyone saw in the night, but the glances shared between riders are longer, heavier. Even Koma is subdued. His hooves strike the stone with an unfamiliar caution, and when you murmur to him, he doesn't flick his ears like he normally does. You can't blame him. Even the birds seem to have forgotten their purpose here. You've long passed the borders of any known village. This is the space between where maps fade and memory tries to turn around. The kind of place where only monks, fugitives, or ghosts find comfort. And you are none of those things. Not yet. Your captain halts the column near a bend where the road splits a fork so worn it's barely visible. One path descends into a narrow gorge, dark and overgrown. The other climbs along the ridgeline, exposed and risky. He stares at both options like a gambler inspecting two broken dice. After a few silent beats, he chooses the gorge. It makes tactical sense, more cover, less exposure. But everyone knows the story of this gorge. Even you, though you'd have forgotten it until now. During the Ashikaga collapse, a full unit vanished here without a trace. No bones, no banners, just 30 men who entered and never walked out. Historians still argue whether they were ambushed by bandits or simply deserted and rewrote their own endings elsewhere. You prefer it was desertion. At least that implies they got out. You roll your shoulders, crack your neck, and follow your captain into the mouth of the old gorge like a man entering an animal's throat. The light vanishes quickly. Sunlight doesn't reach this far, not fully. It trickles in like guilt, splintering through breaks in the canopy in narrow, dusty beams. You start counting them to distract yourself. 1, 2, 3. The foliage is thick, gnarled, the kind of trees that look like they've been arguing for centuries. The trail narrows until you're moving single file, your knees brushing shrubs that tug at your armor like small, desperate hands. Koma snorts twice. You try not to show your nerves, but you check your sword hilt 3 times in as many minutes. You aren't alone in this. The others are doing the same blade, slightly unsheathed, shoulders slightly hunched. The formation tightens, not from command, but instinct. You hear something then, not words, not even footsteps, just breathing. But it's not from your horse, and it's not your own. It's off to the left, low, shallow, ragged, the kind of breathing someone makes when they're trying not to be heard, but failing. Your pulse spikes, you shift in the saddle, and the samurai ahead of you glances back. You both heard it. The captain raises a hand, everyone freezes, and in that freeze, you realize just how loud the world has been up to this point. Your breath fogs. Koma paws the dirt once, then nothing, no signal, no shout, just sudden movement branches snapping on the left, A blur of motion, a scream, then an arrow burying itself into the side of the man in front of you. He drops without ceremony, falling sideways into the underbrush, his horse panicking and kicking up rocks. You draw your sword, leap down from Koma's back, and crouch low. Arrows come again, not many, but precise, controlled, someone trained. You catch sight of them, figures moving just out of reach, cloaked in rough cloth, blades curved like sickles. Not Ronin, something else. Bandits wouldn't shoot this clean. You strike forward when one breaks cover, catching him just as he lunges at Noboru. Your blade cuts through cloth and shoulder. He falls, gasping, eyes wide. You yank your sword free, turn, and parry another strike from a second attacker. This one grins, teeth blackened, breath rancid. You feel his blade graze your hip before you can disarm him. The pain registers, but you move anyway. You don't have time for wounds. The fight is fast and filthy. It doesn't feel like war. It feels like desperation, like starving wolves fighting over the last scrap of something worth dying for. When it ends, only 5 attackers lie dead. The rest vanish into the trees like smoke. You've lost 3 men. One groans, arrow lodged in his thigh, eyes full of panic. You press a cloth against the wound while Noboru snaps the shaft. It's a clean entry. He might survive if the bleeding stops, if infection doesn't set in, if you get out soon. You hate stacking ifs like that. You've seen too many men crushed beneath the weight of them. The gorge winds deeper, and the squad moves slower. The attack has unsettled everything. No more idle glances, no more half jokes. Now everyone watches the shadows. You pass an old stone marker with unreadable carvings worn smooth by time, or maybe by intention. The captain mutters something under his breath as he touches it. You wonder what it means. You don't ask. The trail begins to rise again, pulling you out of the tight jaws of the gorge and back toward a high ridge that overlooks a vast pine forest. From here, the land looks peaceful, distant, almost painted, and somehow, that's worse. It means no one down there knows you're bleeding. You take a break beneath a withered cedar. You remove your helmet, fingers stiff with dried blood and sweat. The cut on your hip stings now that the adrenaline has worn off. You inspect it shallow, but angry looking. You pack it with crushed leaves and tie a cloth strip around it, muttering a curse at whoever made this uniform without a proper pocket for bandages. Noboru sits beside you, not speaking. He just hands you half his rice cake. You take it, chew slowly. It tastes like earth and old cloth, but it keeps your stomach from folding in on itself. As you rest, one of the younger men begins to recite a prayer, not a loud one, just a quiet, rhythmic chant he probably learned as a child. It's meant to calm the dead, or maybe the living. Either way, it seems to help. The wind shifts slightly, and you catch the scent of wood smoke on the air, distant, faint, but real. The captain notices it too. He stands, scans the horizon, and points to a narrow trail running east. You know without asking another march, another uncertainty. The unit moves again. You remount Koma, feeling the stiffness in your thighs now. Every joint, every muscle, ached and blistered from hours of tension. The trail takes you east, toward the smoke, and eventually you see it an old farmstead, abandoned, half collapsed, with a small stable still standing. You approach cautiously. No movement, no signs of fresh life, but no bodies either. That, in your world, counts as good news. You secure the perimeter, and the captain orders a temporary halt. A few men begin to gather firewood. Others collapse in the shade. You tie Koma near a trough and sit by the old well, staring into its black mouth. You wonder how deep it goes. You wonder how many secrets it's kept. Night comes quietly, no attacks, no whispers in the trees, just tired men in tired armor staring into small fires. You clean your blade, mend your armor with thread, and write your daughter's name into the dirt with a stick. You stare at it for a long time, then erase it. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it matters too much. You fall asleep with your hand on your sword, back against the well, the sound of crickets stitching the darkness into something bearable. You dream of nothing. The morning starts with coughing, not yours, not yet, but someone nearby, hacking deep and wet into the misty air as if trying to pull their lungs inside out. You crack one eye open and see a young soldier hunched over a bucket, his armor off, his face pale as chalk. He doesn't look injured, just sick. The kind of sick that doesn't bleed but spreads. No one comments. No one moves to help. You all just pretend not to hear, because you've all decided silently and unanimously that if it isn't a sword wound, it's not your problem today. You stretch your legs, wincing as your hip protests under the tightness of half-healed muscle. The night wasn't restful. Your back is stiff from leaning against the well, and you dreamed of rice fields, golden and endless. But when you reached out to touch the grain, it turned to ash and fluttered away. You don't tell anyone about that. Some dreams are just meant to be carried alone. You find Koma munching on weeds by the stable wall, tail flicking lazily, as though none of this war applies to him. His indifference is the closest thing to peace you've seen in weeks. You pat his neck, check the bandage on his side, and press your forehead briefly against his mane. Still here. You murmur again. A little mantra that's becoming less of a joke and more of a quiet spell against disappearing. The others begin to stir, some groaning, some silent, all slower than the day before. Even the captain seems wearier now, though his face doesn't betray it directly. You can see it in the way he takes longer to buckle his armor. No one mentions it, but everyone sees it. You're ordered to scout ahead with Noboru and 2 others. A short patrol around the eastern perimeter to make sure the smoke from last night didn't draw attention. It's a way to stay busy, or maybe a way to disappear quietly if things go bad. You set out at a quiet pace, boots crunching through dead pine needles, breath misting in the cool air. The woods are calmer here, but not safer. The birds are back, but their calls are short and erratic, as if nervous. You walk with one hand resting on your sword, and your ears tuned more to silence than sound. About an hour in, you come across something unexpected. A stream, shallow but running clear, bordered by flat rocks and clumps of grass. A dragonfly hovers over the water, its wings catching the light. For a moment, it feels like stumbling into a forgotten page of an old poem. Noboru stops and kneels, splashing his face. "If I die today," he says, "at least I'll be clean." You laugh, softly, and do the same. The cold shocks you awake. You imagine your daughter's voice saying something about frogs and fairies, and all the stories she used to believe before you left. You let the water run through your fingers. It's one of those rare moments where time slows, not from fear, but from stillness. Then you see it, a thin strip of cloth snagged on a branch, black, faded, not yours, not Takeda's either. You freeze, nod to Noboru. He sees it too. He draws his bow. You go low, blade half out, the other 2 samurai fanning behind you. You don't call out, you just listen. Nothing stirs. You inch forward, eyes scanning the underbrush, heart slowing itself into that strange steady rhythm that happens right before steel meets flesh. You find the source of the cloth. It's attached to a satchel, torn, abandoned near the base of a tree. Inside dried millet, a rusted knife, and a note written in crude kanji. You can't make out much. Something about payment and silence. Noboru reads it, shakes his head, murks. He mutters, "Or thieves playing samurai." You return to camp and deliver the news. The captain listens, eyes narrowing only slightly. He pockets the note without a word. No orders change. No extra precautions are made. That tells you everything. Either he already knew, or he knows it won't matter. You eat a tasteless lunch of boiled roots and rice crust, staring into the distance while flies buzz at your ankles. The 6th samurai hasn't improved. Now there are 2 more coughing. You pretend not to notice. You know what happens when someone's too weak to keep pace. That afternoon, word arrives. A courier dusty, exhausted, wild-eyed rides in from the south. He delivers a scroll wrapped in waxed paper and collapses without speaking. A medic checks him. Alive, Barely. Heat stroke, dehydration, a cracked rib. You help lift him onto a straw mat and fan him with your palm until the tremors stop. Meanwhile, the captain reads the scroll beneath the porch's shade. When he emerges, he says 4 words. We march at dawn. No questions. Just the quiet groan of men preparing themselves for another forced journey into uncertainty. That night, the fires burn lower. The songs don't return. Someone tries to tell a story, a funny one, about a noble who mistook pickled radish for gold and buried it, but no one laughs. The silence afterward is so complete, even the crickets seem to pause. You clean your sword, sharpen the tip, and oil the blade while listening to Noboru hum that same old tune, the one he always hums when he's pretending not to worry. You join in this time, just the rhythm, just enough to remember you still have lungs. When you lie down, you find yourself staring at the stars again. You count them in clusters, not constellations, one for every man you remember losing, one for every face that won't be told in stories. Your daughter used to believe stars were souls. You used to correct her. Now you're not so sure. You fall asleep thinking about a peach tree in spring, the one that bloomed outside your home like it didn't care about war or loss, or fathers leaving without return dates. Dawn comes gray and cool. The sick men are left behind with 2 guards and the last of the dried fish. No one says it, but everyone knows they've been left to die quietly. Maybe they'll survive. Maybe the guards will mercy them. Maybe the river will wash it all away. You mount up, coma unusually still beneath you, and begin the march toward a place none of you can name, guided only by the map etched into the captain's mind, and the letter that told him where to point his sword next. The path is wider now, carved into the hill by cartwheels long gone. You pass old markers, broken gates, and tiny shrines overtaken by vines. You ride in silence, your unit stretched thin but orderly, like a thread unraveling just slowly enough to hold. The wind rises by midday, carrying with it the scent of ash, fresh, sharp, undeniable. A village is burning, not far, not fast, just enough to signal someone is trying to erase something. You pick up speed. As you crest the hill, you see it a small settlement, maybe 8 homes, now reduced to blackened timber and crawling smoke. No bodies, but no survivors either. The place has been emptied, not pillaged, scrubbed, like someone didn't want anything remembered. You ride into the center and dismount. Ash clings to your boots. A doll lies in the dirt, half charred. A well still smokes. Noboru kicks over a bucket and finds nothing. You check inside the largest house. The roof has collapsed. The fire here was deliberate. You return outside. The captain examines the scene with that same expressionless face, but his knuckles are white around the hilt of his blade. Signal fire, he says quietly. 1 word. Everyone moves. A flag is raised. A runner is dispatched. The perimeter is sealed. You ready your bow. Something is coming, and for the first time since this started, you feel it too. It begins, not with arrows or steel, but with your own heartbeat slamming in your chest so loudly that you mistake it for the first strike. You crouch low beside the smoking well, breath held, ears straining against the breeze that carries only the faint crackle of dying embers and the shuffling of feet repositioning in the ash. Every man is in place, bows half drawn, blades half raised. Even Koma, still tied near the edge of the village, seems to understand what's coming. He stands motionless, ears erect, tail stiff, and then it happens. A flicker of movement at the tree line. Just a glimpse, a robe, maybe, or a shadow. Then another, closer. They're not charging, not yet. They're watching, gauging, like wolves sniffing a wounded deer before deciding if it's still worth the chase. Noboru sees it too. He doesn't speak, but his hand tightens on the shaft of his spear. His face is blank, but the muscles in his jaw twitch. You realize you're not breathing. When it breaks all at once. A cry from the trees, short, guttural, and then they come. Not in waves, but in fragments. Clusters of men with mismatched armor, some on foot, some on battered horses, none carrying banners, no insignia, no sign of allegiance, just blades and bare teeth. Ronin, disgraced samurai. Or worse, those who never belonged to anything to begin with. The ones with nothing left to lose and nothing left to prove. You rise with your bow already drawn, sighting through the smoke and letting the first arrow fly. It hits. You see the man drop, more from surprise than impact, and your hand is already drawing the next. Around you, the squad erupts into controlled chaos. Archers loose volley after volley. Swordsmen brace the front lines, and the captain issues crisp, cruel commands with the clipped tone of a man already grieving the men he's about to lose. They hit fast, hard. The first clash is brutal. Bodies colliding in the narrow village lanes, ash flying, feet slipping on soot-slick ground. You meet a man in a tattered helmet, eyes wild, swinging with no rhythm, just rage. You dodge left, cut once across the thigh, pivot, and bring your hilt down on the back of his neck. He crumples. You move on. The fight feels like drowning. Each engagement short, messy, terrifying. You don't have time to think, only to react. You hear a scream behind you, sharp, familiar. You glance. Noboru, cut across the arm, gritting his teeth as he swings wide and takes down his attacker with a rising slash. You move toward him, but he shakes his head. I'm good. He growls. That's all you need. You pivot away, catching another fighter mid-swing. Your blade lodges in his ribs. You pull. It doesn't come. He falls with it still in him. You draw your short dagger and fight your way back to Koma. He's restless now, pacing in place, sensing danger from all directions. You untie him, mount in one fluid motion, and charge into the fray. From atop a horse, the field looks different, smaller, more like a board game left in a storm. You spot 3 of your men cornered near the rice storehouse. You ride hard, blade out, and crash into their attackers with enough force to scatter the group. Your blade takes a shoulder, Koma's hooves take another. You wheel around, screaming without knowing what you're saying, and the sound rallies the 3 trapped samurai. Together, you push them back 2, 3, 4 steps enough to regroup. You nod once, they nod back, no words, no need. Time fractures, you lose track of sequence. Just moments, the crunch of a man's jaw beneath your heel, the hot spray of blood across your left cheek, the wild look in your captain's eyes as he fells a swordsman half his age, the staggering fall of one of the younger recruits, arrow in the gut, hands grasping at nothing. You don't remember when the attackers begin to retreat, only that one moment. There are too many, and the next, they're gone, melting back into the trees, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead. And just like that, it's over. Not in the heroic way stories end, not in a clean crescendo. It ends in panting, limping, bleeding, in the wet crunch of broken ribs, in the low groan of a man who won't see morning, in the silence that slowly returns and settles like dust. You slide from Koma's back, knees buckling. You brace yourself against his flank, breathing like you've forgotten how lungs are supposed to work. Noboru finds you. His arm is wrapped, his lips split. He says nothing, just sits beside you, exhaling slowly. Around you, the village is still smoldering, now with bodies in the ash. You help stack the fallen. You don't count them. Someone else does. Someone always does. You focus on the hands folding them, crossing swords across chests, wiping ash from eyelids. One man holds a strip of paper with a poem on it. You don't read it. You fold it and place it in his hand. A tiny act of dignity for someone whose name you never knew. A young archer sits by a fallen friend, rocking slightly, whispering something you can't hear. You place a hand on his shoulder. He doesn't react, just keeps whispering. Later, when the fires are out and the bodies covered, the captain calls what's left of you to the center of the square. His voice is low, tight. We don't know if more are coming. We leave by dusk. No objections, just quiet nods. Noboru leans over and whispers, "We're all ghosts already." You glance at him. His face is serious. You don't laugh. You just nod, because he might be right. You pack what you can. Your blade is notched now. You sharpen it briefly, more from habit than hope. You don't clean your armor. There's no point. The blood is part of it now. You feed Koma what little grain remains and refill your flask from the half-collapsed well. You consider resting, But you know if you sit too long, you won't stand again. So you walk the perimeter. Once, twice. You're not looking for enemies. You're reminding yourself you're still breathing. Dusk comes fast. You ride out under a sky too red to feel real. No one speaks. The horses are quiet. The wind carries a strange smell, burned wood, sweat, and something older. Regret. Maybe. The trees bend as you pass, their branches rustling like old women, warning you not to come back. You don't intend to. You don't even look over your shoulder. Night falls as you enter the hills again, and the path twists beneath your hooves. You lead the column now. The captain just behind. Noboru rides on your right, his head lowered slightly, his reins loose. You wonder what he's thinking. Probably the same as you, that this isn't the end, that there's no end. Just more riding, more smoke, more names to forget. You make camp in a hollow beneath a ridge. No fires tonight, no songs. You eat cold rice from your sleeve pouch, drink water that tastes of minerals and moss, and lie back against your saddle. Your hands throb, your eyes itch. You stare at the stars again. Fewer now, or maybe your eyes just won't focus anymore. You reach for your sleeve and pull out the note you wrote for your daughter weeks ago. You still haven't sent it. There's nowhere to send it. You read it by starlight. Just 3 lines. I'm still here. I think of you every time I draw my blade. If I don't return, it was never because I stopped trying. You fold it, tuck it back in your sleeve, press your palm to your chest. Then you close your eyes. Not because you expect sleep, but because even the moon doesn't want to see this anymore. Sleep doesn't come. Not really. You drift in and out of shallow twilight, caught between half memories and half sensations, unable to slide fully into rest. Each time you start to let go, a sound jerks you back, the snap of a twig, the distant hoot of an owl, the subtle creak of someone shifting in their armor nearby. You're not the only one awake. You sense it. The whole camp breathes like a wounded animal, too tired to run, too paranoid to sleep. You watch the faint shimmer of dew forming on Koma's back, his head lowered in that delicate balance between awareness and exhaustion. He deserves better. They all do. But war doesn't pay out what's deserved. It deals in whatever's left. You adjust your shoulder under the saddle, and every bruise makes itself known. Your joints are stiff, your thighs burn, and the cut on your hip has started to throb with a heat that worries you. You press your fingers to it, feel the swelling, and say nothing. Tomorrow can have that problem. Dawn creeps in without light. Just a softening of darkness, a thinning of shadow. You rise, not because you're ready, but because the captain's silhouette moves between bodies like a ghost. No orders shouted, just hands on shoulders. A nod here, a tap there. Everyone knows what it means. You saddle up in silence, fingers fumbling more than usual. Noboru helps you fasten your chest plate without comment. His arm is wrapped tighter now, blood already seeping through the cloth. Neither of you mention it. He swings onto his horse like an old man, slow, deliberate, resigned. The road ahead is a rumor, and even that's generous. The letter that brought you this far has a name scrawled across the bottom, a town you don't recognize. Either it still exists, or it doesn't. Either someone there is waiting for you, or they aren't. Doesn't matter. Orders move you, not belief. You ride out with the others, a slow procession of ghosts still clinging to the weight of their armor. The forest is different here, closer, tighter, less forgiving. The trees seem to lean in, not out, and the path curves without explanation, as though trying to confuse your direction. A few hours in, the air grows damp again. It clings to your face, slides down your back, and soaks the straps on your gear. You feel like you're being slowly returned to the earth, like the mountain itself is reclaiming you piece by piece. Every footstep squelches in the undergrowth, and Koma stumbles more than once on hidden roots. You whisper to him gently, words that mean nothing but sound like home. He keeps moving. That's all you need. You pass the remnants of a burned-out cart, half submerged in moss, its wheels broken and frame twisted like it tried to crawl away before dying. Inside, bits of broken ceramic, a child's sandal, and something that might once have been silk. You don't stop. You don't point. You don't even glance back. Someone behind you mutters a prayer. Someone else spits. History never stops bleeding, and the trail you're following is soaked with it. By midday, the sun tries to break through the canopy, but fails. You stop briefly near a stream, more mud than water now. You refill your flask with caution, filtering the grit through cloth, and chew dried seaweed with cracked lips. It tastes like paper, but it gives you salt. Noboru sits beside you, eyes closed. I dreamed I was back home last night, he says suddenly. My wife was hanging laundry, but the clothes never dried, just flapped in the wind like flags in a war that never ends. You don't know what to say to that, so you nod. He opens his eyes, shrugs. Could have been worse. Could have dreamed I was still here. You laugh, not loudly, but enough to break the air. He smiles, a real one. It doesn't last. Soon after, the trail opens into a small field, overgrown, but clearly once cultivated. A house stands at its edge, collapsed inward, roof like a broken jaw. You're ordered to check it. You dismount, blade drawn, and move slowly. The inside smells of rot and dust. A broken shrine in the corner, a cooking pot rusted through. You find bones, not many. Probably animals. Probably. You exit quickly. The captain glances at you. You shake your head. No threat, no life, just more of the same. The field becomes a trail again, and the trail winds down toward what used to be a road. Stones half buried in weeds mark the path. You see footprints fresh, maybe a day old, too many to count. That tightens your chest. Not fear, not exactly. Just anticipation's ugly cousin, the awareness that you're about to become someone else's problem. The captain confirms it. We're close, he says, scanning the hills. Enemy movements reported near the river, crossing ahead. The squad tenses. Noboru spits into the dirt. You check your blade. Again. The wound on your hip is hot now. You ignore it. The descent is sharper than expected. Koma struggles with the slope, hooves sliding against the loose gravel. You dismount, leading him down slowly, muscles trembling from effort. One of the younger men falls, scraping his shoulder. You help him up. He doesn't thank you. He just nods. You respect that. At the base, the road flattens near a bend in the river, and there you see it, what's left of a checkpoint, destroyed recently. The gates are splintered, the flags burned, the watchtower collapsed into the stream. Bodies, too. Not fresh, but not old. Flies, crows, a few weapons scattered, none worth salvaging. You count 6, all stripped of armor, executed, not fought, hands tied behind backs. You turn away before you look at the faces. You don't want to know if one of them once ate beside you. The captain orders a full sweep. You help drag the bodies off the road, cover them with reeds, whisper a few words, not prayers, exactly, just something to mark the fact they were once men, and not just warnings. Historians still argue whether samurai showed mercy on battlefields, or if such rituals were added later to soften the stories. You suspect it was neither. It wasn't mercy. It was routine, a way to maintain the illusion of control. You perform it anyway. You need the illusion today. Later, while scouting the north bank of the river, you find something unexpected, an offering. A small pile of stones, carefully balanced, beside a pair of sandals and a child's drawing scratched onto a piece of bark. You call Noboru over. He stares at it for a long time. They passed through here, he says quietly. Families, running. You don't ask where they ran to, you just nod. The trail continues west. So do you. By sundown, your squad makes camp near a grove of low trees. No fire, just cold rations and warmer silence. You sit beside Koma, unwrapping your wound and dabbing it with river water. It looks worse now, red, angry, leaking slightly. You clean it anyway. Noboru tosses you a strip of clean cloth. You gonna make it? He asks. Probably not. You reply. He shrugs. Fair. You wrap the cloth, too tight, and lean back against the tree. You breathe. You exist. You count that as a victory. Night comes, and with it, the moon fat and yellow like an eye watching from a distance. The men sleep in fits. You don't sleep at all. Your fingers trace the lines of your blade's hilt, again and again. A ritual now, something to do while the hours burn themselves out. You hum, softly, under your breath, the tune Noboru always hums, the one that doesn't really go anywhere. The wind rustles the trees, and you think about what you've become. Not a hero, not a villain, just one more shape in the dark, one more heartbeat trying not to be the next one to stop. Morning finds you already standing, gear half on, eyes dull but alert in the gray light that seeps through the trees. You didn't sleep, but you don't feel tired in the usual way. More like an old door that's been opened and closed too many times, the hinges creaking with effort but still moving. The wound on your hip pulses, a dull heat that flares when you shift your weight. But you say nothing. You've learned by now that silence is lighter to carry than sympathy. Noboru is awake too, fiddling with the broken clasp on his armor. He's given up trying to fix it and has simply tied the plates together with twine. It makes him look a little crooked, a little frayed at the edges, but then so does everyone. The squad moves slowly, not because they're lazy or reluctant, but because they've grown wise enough to know what comes next is never gentle. The captain surveys the map again, more out of habit than necessity. The path west toward the river crossing is clear, but what lies beyond is another question altogether. You mount Koma, who exhales loudly through his nostrils, almost like he's mocking your reluctance. Yeah, you whisper. Me too. The morning ride is uneventful. The path twists through a corridor of dense cedar trees that hang low over the trail like bowed heads. You can smell water before you see it. The river again, wider now, slower, like it too has grown tired of rushing. You cross it at a shallow bend, boots wet, hooves slipping slightly on the smooth stones. The current pulls at your legs with just enough strength to remind you that nature doesn't care how sharp your sword is. On the far bank, the land flattens, and in the distance, you see the roofs of a small village still intact, smoke curling gently from chimneys, the faintest echo of a bell somewhere within. It doesn't look like a trap, but you've learned not to trust anything that looks too intact. As you approach, the captain holds up a hand. You halt. Scouts ride ahead, 2 on horseback, 1 on foot. You watch them enter the village. Nothing happens. A few long moments pass, and then the signal comes, an arm raised. A circular motion, all clear. You advance slowly, warily, as if the village might decide to vanish the moment you blink. It's a quiet place, small, maybe 20 homes. A rice paddy stretches behind it, golden and ready for harvest. Chickens wander the roads. A child peers from behind a curtain. An old man sweeps dust off an already clean porch. The villagers don't look afraid, just cautious, like they've seen too many soldiers pass through and learned that surviving means keeping your mouth shut and your head down. You dismount and walk with Noboru toward the well in the village square. A woman offers you water without a word. You nod, accept it, drink slowly. It tastes like stone and leaves. She doesn't ask your name. You don't offer it. Names are heavy. You've stopped trading them. The captain negotiates with the headman, an elder with a crooked back and a voice like dry bark. You can't hear the words, but you see the gestures. The old man points toward the western hills, shakes his head, raises 3 fingers. That's enough to know what's waiting a patrol, maybe more, a force larger than yours, and less inclined toward diplomacy. Your unit decides to rest here until dusk. The villagers allow it with that same resigned quiet, the way people accept rain when they've run out of roofs to fix. You tie Koma beside a barn, remove your armor piece by piece, and stretch your limbs until your muscles remember what it's like not to be braced for death. The wound on your hip weeps again. You find a quiet spot behind the storage house, clean it with more river water, bite down on a leather strap, and pour powdered moss into it. The pain makes your vision blur. You don't cry out. You just sit there afterward, back against the wall, watching a beetle crawl across your boot like it owns the world. Later, Noboru finds you sitting in the shade, legs stretched out, eyes half closed. He throws you a rice dumpling wrapped in a leaf. Tastes like sadness, he says, but better than air. You laugh and eat. He sits beside you, chewing slowly, watching a pair of children chase each other with sticks. One pretends to be a bandit, the other a warrior. They don't argue over roles. They just switch halfway through, like it doesn't matter who wins. Noboru sighs. When I was that age, I thought dying in battle would be like stepping into a legend. You don't reply, because you thought the same thing. Dusk arrives like a slow blink. You suit up again. The armor feels heavier than ever, not because of weight, but because of memory. Every plate, every knot, carries yesterday's screams, today's silence, and tomorrow's unknown. The villagers don't gather to watch you leave. One old woman hands you a dried persimmon. You bow. She bows lower. No words are exchanged. You ride west, toward the hills, toward whatever waits. The air grows colder as the sun dips behind the ridge. You ride in near silence. The path is narrow now, flanked by tall grass and the occasional stone marker covered in moss. You pass a shrine that has collapsed into itself, just a tangle of wood, rope, and rusted bells. Noboru mutters a phrase under his breath as you pass. A prayer, a warning you don't ask. The column slows. Ahead, the scout returns. A signal, 2 fingers raised, palm down. You dismount and proceed on foot, moving through the tall grass until you reach the ridge. From here, you see them, a force of about 30 men, camped at a crossroads, torches lit, weapons at the ready, no flags, no standards, but clearly organized. You recognize their stances, their spacing. These aren't bandits. These are professionals, Ronin maybe, or disavowed retainers. Their armor is mismatched but cared for. Their blades are clean. You and Noboru crawl back to the captain. Too many. Noboru whispers, but not so many we can't make it hurt. The captain nods once. We attack at nightfall. And so, preparations begin. Arrows are counted, blades sharpened, armor tightened. You eat one last rice ball in silence. You draw a small symbol into the dirt beside your foot, your family crest. Simplified. Then you rub it out with your palm. You sit with Noboru, sharing one canteen, passing it back and forth like a ritual. No speeches, no strategies shared aloud, just breathing, just waiting. When the signal comes, a bird call. Low and sharp, you rise. You move. The night wraps around you like smoke. You draw your blade, and you pray not to survive, but to be enough, just for one more hour. You move through the tall grass with the rest of the squad, crouched low, the wet blades brushing against your cheek like cold fingertips. The moon is half hidden behind clouds, casting just enough light to see shapes, but not details. That's how you want it. You've tied a cloth around your armor to muffle the clinking, and each step feels like you're walking on the back of a sleeping beast too loud, and you die. The camp you scouted glows faintly ahead, firelight flickering like a heartbeat, torches standing in uneven rows, casting shadows that dance across the stones. You can hear them now, low conversation, the scrape of metal, the occasional cough. They're awake, but not alarmed. They don't know you're coming. Not yet. The captain raises his hand in the dark, holds it a moment, then drops it. You draw your blade. You don't grip it tight, not yet. You've learned that the tighter you hold it, the slower you move. You've learned a lot about dying by not dying. Koma waits far behind, tied to a tree, out of harm's way. If you make it back, he'll be the first to know. The first to charge are the flanking pairs, slipping into the camp's edges like wind. You hear the first gasp, followed by the soft crunch of a body hitting the dirt, then the second, then a cry, then the explosion of noise blades clashing, men shouting, wood splintering. You rush in behind them, slipping through the break in their formation like a wave of smoke. A man rises in front of you, face painted with a mix of shock and fury. He lunges before thinking. You sidestep, slice, and feel the resistance of muscle, then bone. He falls. Another comes from your left. You duck. His sword whistles past your ear. You pivot and drive your hilt into his ribs. He drops, wheezing, trying to scream. You silence him, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. If he calls out, someone else might turn into time. The fight spreads fast. Campfires are kicked over, tents collapse, their formation shatters under the weight of confusion, but they're quick to recover. These are not green fighters. They regroup, yelling orders, reforming a crude perimeter. You and Noboru break left, blades flashing, cutting through the edge of their line. You lose track of how many you face. They blur into a wall of metal and skin and heat. You're bleeding now, somewhere. Maybe your arm, maybe your thigh. You can't tell. You don't stop. Stopping is what they want. You move forward again. A man barrels into you with a spear. You barely parry in time, the tip grazing your shoulder, slicing through cloth and skin. You grunt, swing upward, and catch his forearm. He yelps and drops the weapon. You finish it quickly, efficiently. He blinks at you once before falling. His eyes stay open. You step over him. This is not the part of the story anyone writes poems about. This is the part they skip. The part where your knees shake, your stomach lurches, and your sword is so slick with blood, it almost slips from your grip. You pause only long enough to wipe it on the sleeve of a fallen body, then you continue. You hear Noboru behind you. He's panting, swearing, laughing between gasps like a lunatic. "You seeing this?" he says as he slashes at another enemy. "They didn't expect us to be this angry." You don't respond. You don't have the breath. You lock eyes with a man who looks older than your father, sword raised high, eyes sunken with years of war. You both charge. He's faster than expected. His blade nicks your cheek. Yours finds his gut. You both stagger. He stares at you like he recognizes something. You step back and let him fall. By the time the chaos subsides, you're kneeling in the dirt, arms shaking, blood drying against your neck. The torches have been extinguished or knocked over, and the only light comes from the embers glowing in collapsed fire pits. Around you, the wounded groan. Some call for mothers, some pray, some say nothing at all. Noboru collapses beside you, face pale, chest heaving. He's got a cut above his eye and one across his left palm. "Still here," he says. You nod. Barely. You wipe your blade, resheath it, and rise. The captain steps into the center of the ruined camp, his face unreadable. His armor is cracked, helmet gone, one hand pressed to his ribs. "Secure the perimeter," he says. "Tend to our own. Leave the rest." The rest means the dying, the ones who won't make it through the night. You turn away before the mercy blades come out. You've seen enough eyes go dim. You spend the next hour walking the edge of the camp, checking for movement, signs of regrouping, signs of retreat. There's nothing. Whatever force this was, you broke it, or they ran, or both. You find a scroll tucked inside one of the tent's orders, poorly written, mentions of a lord you vaguely recognize, a minor noble with delusions of rising through chaos. You pocket it, unsure if anyone will care. Probably not. War eats letters the same way it eats men, quickly, without chewing. As dawn breaks, the light filters in through the smoke, turning the camp into a strange blend of gold and gray. You find a moment to sit beside Noboru. He's chewing a strip of dried fish, passing you half without speaking. You take it, chew slowly. Your mouth is dry. Everything tastes like metal. "How bad is it?" he asks. You shrug. "Could be worse." He looks around at the dead. "Could be better." You both laugh, low and tired. You find Koma still tied where you left him, munching leaves, completely unfazed. You press your forehead against his and whisper, "It's done." But you know better. Nothing is ever done. This was just one camp, one enemy, one fire out of many. Still, it's a breath, a pause. You'll take it. The captain orders a brief rest. 3 hours, no more. You sleep against your saddle, boots still on, hand still on your sword. Your dreams are strange, filled with voices you don't recognize, faces you've never seen, and a long road that leads nowhere. You wake with a start, heart racing. Noboru is already up, tightening his gear. "Dream of home?" he asks. "Dream of nowhere?" You answer. He doesn't ask for more. You burn what you can't carry, bury what you can't burn. The rest is left for the crows. The sun is high by the time you ride again. The column, smaller now, thinner. Every man left is bent forward, slightly crooked, like you're all being pulled down by the weight of the ones who didn't make it. You don't talk about them. You don't list them. You just carry the silence forward. The road south curves through a narrow pass flanked by cliffs and jagged stone. It's beautiful in a way that hurts, like the world doesn't realize you're grieving. The sky's too blue, the wind too gentle. You hate it for being kind. You ride beside Noboru, neither of you speaking. There's nothing left to say that hasn't already been burned into your skin. The captain rides ahead. Unreadable. He doesn't give speeches. He doesn't promise rest. He just rides. And you follow. Because that's what you do. That's what you've always done. The saddle creaks. Your blade presses against your hip. The sun climbs. The shadows stretch. You ride, not toward victory, not toward glory. You ride because the road is still there. The road narrows again as the sun sinks behind the hills, and you find yourself riding into a kind of silence that doesn't belong to nature, or men, or memory. It's the silence of places that don't want to be seen, where the air folds in on itself, and the trees lean just slightly too close, whispering things only the wind understands. The squad is smaller now. The gaps between riders feel wider. Even when your shoulders nearly touch, you don't speak. None of you. Not out of discipline, but because there's nothing left to say that hasn't been said already in sweat, blood, and the look in a man's eye when he realizes his name may not be remembered. You glance to your left. Noboru rides beside you. His posture looser, head low, his bandaged arm hangs slightly. The cloth darker now than it was yesterday. You don't ask. He doesn't offer. You ride like that for a long while, listening to the sound of hooves and the occasional click of metal shifting against bone. Eventually, the path breaks open onto a plateau overlooking a field. Not a battlefield, though it might have been once. It's quiet now. Just tall grass, swaying in golden waves, with a scattering of broken stone markers that don't seem to belong to any shrine you know. Maybe graves, maybe warnings. The captain halts and raises a hand. You stop. You all do. Because even when nothing is said, you know when something's wrong. You scan the horizon. Nothing moves. But it's too still. Even the birds are missing. And in that stillness, your breath changes. Slower. Shallower. You hear your own pulse in your ears. The captain speaks in a voice barely above a whisper. We make camp here. There's no protest. Even though every muscle in your body is telling you to keep riding, you dismount, stretch your legs. Every step feels like your body is made of splintered bamboo. Koma sighs through his nose as you loosen his saddle and check his legs. Still strong, still steady. He's outlived half your squad. You brush his flank gently, muttering thanks, like a priest to a shrine that hasn't collapsed yet. Camp is set with minimal words. No fire, no music. Rations are passed out, stale rice, salted root, bitter water. You eat mechanically. Noboru chews with his eyes closed. You suspect he's counting breaths. You do the same. Around you. The others sit like statues carved from ash, too exhausted to even pretend to be comfortable. One man dozes off with his sword still across his lap. Another sharpens a blade that's already sharp. The captain sits alone, writing something on a small wooden tablet. Orders a report of well you'll never know. You don't ask. You lie back and stare up at the sky. The stars are clear tonight, too clear, like someone wiped the sky clean just for this evening. That should comfort you. Instead, it unsettles you. It feels staged, like a backdrop painted for your final scene. You try not to think like that, but you do. Everyone does. You shift your weight, adjust the wrap on your hip. The wound's warm now. Not hot, not yet, but it's heading there. Infection is patient. You've seen it bloom in men who look stronger than you. You squeeze your thigh gently and wince. Still hurts. That's something. A while later, Noboru speaks. Just 3 words. I saw her. You glance over. He's staring straight ahead, eyes fixed on nothing. In my dream, she was wearing the blue robe, the one I burned after the miscarriage. His voice is even, but cracked at the edges. She didn't say anything, just stood there. I wanted to run to her, but my legs wouldn't move. He swallows. I think I'm ready. You nod, slowly. You don't say it back. Not because you aren't, but because saying it makes it too real. And real things get taken from you faster. Sleep doesn't come. You sit upright after an hour, restless. You walk the edge of camp, sword in hand, scanning the field, pretending that duty is the reason you're awake. But really, you just need to move. You reach one of the old stone markers, squat beside it, and trace the moss with your finger. There are etchings, faded almost to nothing kanji, so worn they could be anything. One looks like end, another, maybe child, or field. The ambiguity comforts you. At least the dead don't need clarity. Then you hear it a rustle in the grass. Not wind, not a bird, a sound with intention. You rise, blade half drawn, heart ticking faster. You scan the field. Nothing. Another rustle. Closer now. You don't call out. You move. Quiet. Smooth. You reach the edge of the tall grass and pause. You feel Noboru's presence behind you. Silent as a ghost. He's drawn too. And then movement. 3 figures. Low. Crouched. Armed. Not yours. Not from the village. Not scouts. You strike first. Quick. Clean. One goes down with a gurgle. The other lunges. You parry. He's fast. Trained. You trade blows. His blade nicks your arm. You slice across his chest. He stumbles. Noboru finishes him. The third runs. You don't chase. You stand there, panting, sword trembling in your hand, blood running down your sleeve. The grass is wet, with dew, with blood, with something else. You wipe your blade, then your face. Your hand comes away red. Back in camp, the others are already on their feet. The captain listens as you report, nodding slowly. Scouts, he mutters, or bait. The perimeter is tightened. Watches doubled. You sit, back against a tree, trying to calm the pulse that still refuses to settle. Noboru binds your arm without a word. His hands shake. You let him. You watch his face. His eyes are somewhere else. You don't pull him back. Eventually, morning comes. Slow, reluctant, like the sun had to be dragged into rising. You pack your gear, help the others load supplies. Koma is restless. He doesn't like the smell of the wind. You don't either. The captain announces the next leg toward the coast. Where rumor has it, a stronghold still holds. You all nod. You all prepare. Because that's what you do. Not because you believe it will help, but because stopping is worse. You ride through the broken field in single file, past the old stones, past the place where blood dried in the grass. No one looks down. No one speaks. Even the birds stay away. And somewhere in the silence, you realize the part of you that used to flinch is gone. The part that hesitated. The part that hoped. What's left is quieter, sharper, and still, somehow, breathing. The wind changes as you ride closer to the coast. No longer warm or scented with pine and dust, but salted, wet, and heavy with the strange promise of endings. You feel it before you see it, the way the air presses differently against your skin. How your breath carries farther when you exhale. How even Koma's ears twitch toward something you can't hear. The hills roll downward now, guiding you gently toward what might be a village, a fort, or a ruin. No one knows. The map in the captain's hand is so worn, the ink is a smudge of hope more than information. But you follow anyway. The trees thin. The birds return, but they keep to the canopy. Silent observers with nothing left to sing. The unit rides in 2 columns. Tighter than usual, more cautious. No one wants to admit it, but everyone feels the same unspoken truth. Something waits ahead. Something final, or close enough to feel like it. Noboru rides beside you again. His face unreadable, the blood-soaked bandage on his arm unchanged. His hands rest loosely on the reins, but his fingers twitch every few minutes, maybe a habit, maybe a warning his body hasn't figured out how to voice. As you crest the last hill before the sea, you see it a coastal plain flattened by wind and rain, broken by 2 or 3 clusters of old structures that might have once been homes. or stables, or watchtowers. One of them still stands mostly intact, a low fortress with slanted walls and a roof that sagged from weight it was never meant to carry. A small signal fire burns outside the gate. That's a surprise. Fire means people. Fire means possibility, or danger. The captain raises a hand, and you all dismount. You feel your knees creak, your boots sinking slightly into the wet earth. You stretch your arms, rotate your shoulders. Everything aches in new ways now. The pain is dull, constant. You miss the clean edge of fresh injury. At least it felt honest. Scouts go ahead. You wait with coma, resting your hand on his mane, breathing in rhythm with his slow exhale. The sea is near, but not visible. Its scent is everywhere, and the gulls have returned. They wheel overhead, shrieking like hungry ghosts. You look at them and wonder if they see the same things you do, or if they just follow the wind. 15 minutes pass, then 20, then one scout returns. He speaks to the captain in a low voice. You catch a few words occupied, few, guarded, battered. The captain nods once, calls for the column to advance. You mount again, legs stiff. You ride down the slope, into the plain, through the mud, toward the structure that waits like a mouth pressed into the earth. When you reach the gate, it creaks open slowly, not from threat, but from exhaustion. Two men step out, both armed, but relaxed. Their armor is patched, rusted, clearly worn by those who haven't seen resupply in months. One bows. "You with the inland patrol?" the man asks. His voice is rough, but not hostile. The captain doesn't answer directly. "Who commands here?" The guard glances back toward the compound. No one, or all of us. Depends on the day. The gates open wider. You're waved inside. The courtyard is cracked and flooded in places, with weeds pushing through the stones like memory reclaiming its space. A few men, maybe 15 total, are scattered about repairing a door, drying grain, sharpening blades with no particular urgency. You see one cooking something over a low fire. It smells like boiled radish and old fish. You dismount slowly, eyeing the structure. It's defensible. Barely. But you wouldn't want to be trapped here. Noboru walks past you and mutters, "If this is where we're meant to end, at least the view might be decent." You nod. The sea lies just beyond the far wall, visible now in blue flashes through the gaps in stone wide, endless, and disinterested in all of your suffering. Inside, you're assigned a room, 4 walls, a roof, no door. You sit on the floor, strip off your armor, and breathe. The wound on your hip is swollen and dark. You wash it again. But it doesn't help. It's inside you now. Not just the cut, but everything: the war, the road, the deaths you've stepped over. Noboru helps you rebind it. His hands are steadier than yours. "You're rotting," he says lightly. From the outside in, you smirk. "Then I'm just ahead of schedule." He doesn't laugh. He just presses the cloth tighter and says, "Don't die here. It's a boring place to haunt." You spend the rest of the afternoon walking the perimeter. The men here are quiet, not unfriendly, just spent. One tells you he's been stationed here since the rains began, and hasn't seen his wife in 3 seasons. Another asks if you have salt to trade. You don't. No one does. There's no chatter about victory, no talk of lords or commands. Just maintenance, just survival. You find a collapsed archway covered in vines, sit beneath it, and watch the sea. It shifts constantly, but never changes. You understand that now. That evening, the captain gathers what's left of your unit, less than 24 men. You all sit in a half circle in the courtyard. The light is fading, and torches have been lit. He speaks without preamble. There are reports of a push inland, enemy units consolidating. No command has come from the capital. We don't know who's winning, or if there's a side to win. He pauses. His voice is tired, but solid. This outpost is not worth defending. There is no food, no reinforcement, no message birds. We stay the night. We leave at dawn. If any man wishes to remain, you may. No one speaks. No one rises. The silence is not defiance. It's fatigue sculpted into discipline. After the meeting, you sit with Noboru on the wall, feet dangling over the edge. Below you, waves crash against stone, rhythmic and endless. He pulls a flask from inside his tunic, something strong. You share it. It burns, then soothes. You ask him, if you could go anywhere right now, where would you go? He stares at the horizon. Home. Even if it's just bones and crows. You nod, and he asks, you think, anywhere that remembers my name. He clinks the flask against your knuckles. Then we better not die here. Night falls like a blanket soaked in ink. You return to your room, lie on the wooden floor, and listen to the sea. It speaks in its own language, one you almost understand now. Not words, just reminders that all things end, that all journeys return, that all names are eventually washed away. Before sleep, you pull the note from your sleeve again, the one for your daughter. You add one line, then fold it and press it to your chest. I don't know who I'll be when this ends, but I haven't let go yet. And then, finally, sleep comes. Dawn doesn't rise, it crawls. A dim, colorless hush spreads over the compound like a cold breath. You wake not from rest, but from the kind of sleep that pretends to be rest, the kind that leaves your limbs heavier than before, and your thoughts half buried in mud. You sit up slowly, wincing as your hip flares with its usual angry warmth. And for a brief moment, you wonder if this is the morning your body will finally refuse to stand. It doesn't. You push yourself up, grip your sword, and begin again. Around you, the others stir with the same practiced grimace, like bones being remembered by the bodies that carry them. Noboru is already outside, adjusting the twine that holds his chest plate together, the corner of his sleeve now completely torn, revealing a dark purple bruise that seems to stretch farther each day. He doesn't comment on it. Neither do you. There's no sense pointing out what's obvious everything hurts. You just nod. He nods back, and like that, you begin to move. There's no ceremony as you depart. The remaining men from the outpost, what few there are, offer nothing more than a silent glance. As your group files out through the broken gate and into the soft coastal mist, the sea fades behind you, replaced by wet hills and shriveled grass, the path winding into a valley that might have once held a road, but now holds only memory. The sky stays low and gray, a flat, suffocating canvas above your heads. You ride in silence, every hoofstep sinking slightly in the mud. The sound is rhythmic, hypnotic, the kind of sound that keeps you from drifting too far into the fog inside your own skull. You count each step, not for any reason, but because counting is control, and control is the last thing you have. 2 hours in, the wind shifts. You smell fire, not fresh, not close, but recent enough to feel like a warning. The captain halts, raises a closed fist. You freeze with the others, eyes scanning the ridge to the east. Nothing moves, but the smoke scent thickens. Someone's burned something large, or someone. You don't speak. No one does. You dismount quietly, lead Koma by the reins up a narrow incline to get a better view. Noboru crouches beside you at the crest. Below, in a shallow basin near the woods, you see a caravan of wagons turned over, some still smoldering. A few bodies slump beside them. You can't tell whose. No banners, no armor. Civilians, maybe. Merchants, refugees. The kind of people the war forgets until they rot. The captain signals the group down toward the wreckage. You follow slowly, weapons drawn but held low. There's no ambush, just silence. You walk past the bodies. One woman's eyes are still open. You close them with the back of your glove. Another clutches a child too tightly. Both are cold. You step away. One wagon holds barrels of rice, mostly untouched. You gather what you can, wrap it in cloth, and hand it off. Every grain is sacred now. The rest of the wagons are splintered beyond repair. Arrows stick from the wood at odd angles. A few show signs of fire by oil, not accident, but intention. Noboru finds tracks horses, maybe 20 of them, heading south. They're close, he mutters. You nod. The captain nods too. No vote, no plan. You mount again. The pursuit is steady but careful. You move through thick forest where the path narrows and rises over mossy stone. Each bend feels like it might be the one. You don't relax. You don't blink. You breathe in patterns, trying to stay in rhythm with Koma's stride. The pain in your hip burns now, flaring with each shift of weight. You press your knee tighter to the saddle and try to forget the pulse there. Noboru notices, but says nothing. Instead, he hands you a strip of bark to chew. Bitter, spicy, numbing. Don't ask what it is, he says. You chew anyway. Late in the afternoon, the trees open, and there they are resting in a clearing, just as the tracks promised. Riders, 20, maybe more, lounging near a stream, their horses tied loosely, their weapons nearby but not held, complacent. You all drop low behind the ridge. The captain surveys. His voice is low, but firm. We hit fast. We don't chase. We hit. We leave. You and Noboru glance at each other. You don't speak. You don't have to. This will be fast, violent, necessary. You ready your bow, not your blade yet. You notch the first arrow and exhale, long and slow. The captain raises his hand, then drops it. Arrows fly. The first man drops without a sound, then chaos. Your second arrow hits a rider reaching for his sword. The third misses. You drop the bow and draw steel. You charge down the ridge. Koma under you like thunder. The enemy scatters. Some fight, some run. You meet the first man near the stream. He swings low, you block. Counter. Cut through his shoulder. He screams. You don't wait. Another charges you. Noboru intercepts. A clean thrust. A fall. You ride in a circle. Scanning. Cutting. One blade blocks you too hard. Too strong. You parry. Slide sideways. Nearly lose your seat. You recover. You slash. His face opens. He falls. Your arm is bleeding now, but you can still grip. That's all that matters. It ends quickly. Too quickly. The few who survive flee into the forest. You don't follow. You want to, but your chest is burning now. Your limbs stiffening. You dismount slowly, breathing hard. Koma pants behind you, sides heaving. You kneel near the stream, rinse your blade, then your face. The water is cold, sharp. It wakes something, or dulls it. You can't tell anymore. Noboru sits beside you, wiping blood from his cheek. We're getting good at this, he mutters. You don't answer. You look at the dead. You count them. You don't recognize any faces, but that doesn't mean they were strangers. Just unnamed. You burn the bodies. Fast. Efficient. The smoke rises into the gray sky like a message you don't want to send. You gather what supplies remain: water, salted roots, a few bolts of fabric. One man has a letter on him, half burned, written in a delicate hand. You fold it carefully, place it inside your sleeve next to your daughter's note. You don't know why, just that someone should carry it a little farther. That night, you camp near the stream. The ground is soft, the air colder. You huddle near Noboru beneath a canvas tarp, watching the fire flicker low. I keep wondering if this ends, he says. If we'll ever stop moving. You stare at the flames. Maybe. Or maybe it's just quieter one day. That's close enough. He nods, doesn't speak again. You dream of your home, but it's different. Bigger. Empty. You wander through it without finding anyone. The doors don't open. The garden is overgrown. The well has run dry. You wake before you reach the porch. It's still dark. The fire is ash. Noboru is asleep, mouth slightly open. You sit up, press your hand to your hip. It's swollen. You wince. You wrap it tighter. You don't go back to sleep. You just wait for the next morning to find you. The morning finds you already on your feet, knees sore, shoulders stiff, the taste of sleep still bitter in your mouth. You didn't wake so much as you ran out of the ability to lie still. You check the wound on your hip. It's angry now, hot and red, and your leg trembles slightly when you put weight on it. But it has to. You're not the only one moving slowly. The entire unit is bent at the edges, armor scuffed beyond recognition, bandages dark, faces hollowed by the kind of exhaustion that doesn't fix itself with food or rest. Noboru is silent as he rolls his mat. He doesn't complain. None of you do. You don't need to. The air itself carries the ache for you. The captain gives the word. You pack your things, mount up, and ride. The stream trail leads you east now, skimming along the edge of a ruined woodland, where every tree bears scorch marks or shattered branches, and even the birds seem hesitant to sing. The map says there's a supply post ahead, near an abandoned shrine. The map has lied before. Still, it's the only thing pointing toward what's left of civilization. The wind smells of salt and ash, and each step Koma takes sounds louder than it should, as if the earth has grown thinner. You keep your hand near your sword hilt, not because you expect an ambush, but because your grip on reality feels slippery lately, and the steel gives you something to hold. Noboru breaks the silence at one point to mutter, "We're shadows following ghosts." You don't know if he means the enemy or yourselves. You don't ask. The answer's the same either way. By midday, you reach what's left of the shrine. It's perched at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast swath of fog-choked valley. The torii gate still stands tilted, cracked, but upright. That feels like a victory. The inner grounds, however, are overgrown and littered with debris-broken tiles, splintered beams, offerings reduced to mold and mouse nests. A single stone statue of Jizo leans forward as if weary of watching the world fall apart. The squad dismounts. The captain orders a rest. You slump beside a mossy rock, peel off your gauntlets, and try to breathe deep without coughing. The air is thick here. It clings to the back of your throat. You chew a dried persimmon someone passes around. It tastes like memory, sweet and shriveled. Noboru lowers himself next to you, groaning as he sits. "I think we're already dead," he mutters. You respond without looking at him. Then we're haunting the wrong war. Later, while checking the far edge of the compound, you find a body, half buried beneath the roots of a collapsed tree. A samurai, or what's left of one. His armor is rusted, but the mon on his chest plate is still faintly visible. You don't recognize it. Probably a local retainer, lost months ago. Maybe no one came looking. Maybe no one even knew he was gone. You kneel, press your fingers to the armor, then draw a circle in the dirt beside him. You say nothing. Words don't travel that far anymore. When you return to the group, the captain is staring at the sky, clouds moving too fast above you. "Storm coming," he says. You look up. He's right. The light's shifted, the kind of gray that presses everything down. Rain is a certainty. He gives the order, "Move out." Now, you pack quickly. The wind picks up. You pull your hood tight, remount, and ride. The trail narrows again, cutting into the side of a hill with loose stone and brush that grabs at your legs. The rain comes in steady sheets, cold and fast, turning the path into a stream. Mud splashes into your boots. Your fingers go numb. Koma trudges forward, ears flat, one step at a time. Noboru coughs behind you, a raw, scraping sound that worries you more than any blade ever has. You ride until the sky turns dark again. Not from nightfall, but from the storm's weight. Lightning cracks behind the hills. The thunder doesn't follow immediately. That's worse. The captain finds a hollow in old farmer's storehouse, long abandoned, half collapsed but dry enough to shelter in. You dismount with effort, knees locking. You limp inside, sit against a wall, and watch as the others file in. Water drips from every edge of your gear. You peel off the armor, piece by piece, your breath catching when you remove the hip guard, the wound swollen and red, the cloth soaked through. Noboru helps you clean it, hands gentler than you'd expect from someone who's seen as much death as he has. "Still not your day," he whispers. You nod. "Maybe tomorrow." The wind howls outside, screaming through the cracks in the wall. Inside, the men are quiet. A few sip broth made from boiled roots and seawater. No one says much. You press your head back against the wood, close your eyes, and try to drift. But dreams come fast, uninvited. You see your wife not as she was, but as a statue, unmoving, eyes empty. Your daughter runs in circles around her, laughing without sound. You try to call out, but your throat fills with smoke. You wake, gasping. A few others are awake too. One stares at the rafters. Another sharpens a blade that doesn't need sharpening. Noboru is asleep, curled on his side, one hand gripping the strap of his armor like a child holding a blanket. You watch him for a moment, then return to staring at the dark. The storm rages. You wait. By dawn, the rain has stopped. The sky is pale, the kind of white that means the sun is trying, but not quite winning. You pack in silence. Your hip throbs. You limp more now, but you don't stop. The squad rides out again, slower. The captain says nothing, but you all know you're near the end of something, whether it's the mission, or your strength, or your story you can't tell. But something's closing. Around midday, you crest a hill and see a plume of smoke in the distance, thin, black, fresh, a town, maybe, or a camp. Maybe the last one. You ride toward it, one heartbeat at a time. You don't speak as you ride toward the smoke, none of you do. It rises in a thin black thread against the pale sky, too disciplined to be a wildfire, too deliberate to be chance, the kind of smoke that says people are still there, still trying, still watching. You follow the trail across the ridge, through brush that catches on your sleeves and leaves scratches you won't remember. The earth is soaked from the storm. Every hoofstep a muffled squelch, every breath heavy with the scent of wet ash and scorched cedar. The wound in your hip is hot again, fevered, a fire beneath your skin. You feel it throb in time with your heartbeat, but you grit your teeth and ride, because there is nothing left to do but finish. Noboru rides close, swaying slightly in the saddle, his eyes half-lidded. He hasn't said anything since dawn. He doesn't need to. You feel his silence like a second presence inside your chest, familiar and bracing. By the time you reach the outskirts of the town, the light has flattened into late afternoon gray. The buildings are small, many damaged roofs patched with thatch, walls leaning inward, but the place is alive. You see movement, a woman pulling water from a well, a boy crouched by a barrel, carving something with a dull knife, a dog barking, then falling quiet. The captain halts and signals to dismount. You groan as your boots hit the ground, your legs barely holding. Koma snorts softly, nudging your shoulder as you remove the saddlebag and sling it over your back. You press your forehead to his for a brief moment and whisper, almost. He blinks slowly, as if he understands. The villagers don't run. They don't cheer. They just watch. The headman comes forward thin, gray-bearded, robes faded from sun and rain. He bows low and speaks simply. "You're late." The captain doesn't respond. He just nods and asks, "How many?" The old man gestures toward the center of the village. 17. 5 can fight. 2 are too young. 1 just died yesterday. There's no drama in his voice, just the math of survival. You follow them through narrow lanes, past homes with broken shutters, past men mending arrows with thread and bone, past women stirring pots of barley and dried fish. No one weeps, no one rejoices. It's like walking into a house where someone's already begun grieving, but the body hasn't cooled yet. The captain speaks briefly with the villagers. The enemy raiders, Ronin, or remnants has been circling for days, testing fences, stealing livestock, watching, no banners, no names, just blades. They're expected to return tonight. You listen, your breath slow, the pain in your hip sharpening like a whisper. The captain looks over your group, just 13 men now, including the boy who hasn't spoken since the gorge. "We stay," he says. "We fight. We hold. No one disagrees." You set to work. The village is too open. There's no wall, only a low ring of logs and dirt. You help reinforce the barricade with what's available: planks, carts, even a shattered ladder lashed to poles with rope. Your hands bleed from splinters. You don't stop. Noboru sharpens stakes, drives them into the ground, his fingers trembling only when he thinks no one is looking. One of the villagers hands you rice wrapped in leaves. You thank her? She doesn't smile. She just bows once and walks away. You eat quickly, your stomach tightening around the warmth like it doesn't believe it's real. As night falls, you take your position near the east entrance, where the path bends through trees. The light fades fast, and torches are placed low to avoid backlighting the defenders. You crouch behind the barricade, sword in hand, breath shallow. Noboru is beside you, still humming that tuneless melody. His eyes are closed. You don't know if he's praying or remembering. Maybe both. The village is silent. Even the wind has stopped. You feel it before you see it, the shift, the held breath of a world waiting to exhale, then movement, shadows in the trees, then shapes, then steel. They come fast. You stand as they rush the barricade, yelling, blades flashing. The world collapses into noise and motion. You swing, parry, slash. You move without thinking. A man tries to climb the wall. You drive your sword into his shoulder. Another leaps beside you. You drop low, slash his knee. Feel him fall. Someone screams behind you. A torch is kicked into the dirt. Smoke rises. Fire begins. They keep coming. You lose track of time, of your body, of where you begin and end. You kill, and kill again. You take a cut across your ribs, another across your thigh. You block one blade with your forearm, feel the steel bite deep, but your other hand drives your sword through his gut. You turn and see Noboru fighting two at once. He takes one down, the other stabs him through the side. He falls. You scream not out loud, but inside, so loud it shakes your ribs. You fight toward him, but another man blocks you. You kill him. Another comes. You kill again. You reach Noboru. He's breathing, barely. You drag him behind the barricade, press cloth to his wound. He smiles weakly. You always did take your time. He wheezes. You don't reply. You can't. The fight lasts forever. Then suddenly, it doesn't. The enemy breaks. They run, some limping, some screaming, some silently disappearing into the trees like they were never there. You don't cheer. You collapse. Your sword falls from your hand, clattering against stone. You sit, knees bent, chest heaving, blood soaking through your clothes. Around you, the village stands, barely. The captain limps past, face streaked with soot, nods once at you, and keeps walking. You spend the rest of the night dragging bodies, binding wounds, tending fires. You carry Noboru to the headman's house, place him on a mat, press your hand to his chest. He's alive. His breath is thin, but it's there. You don't sleep. You just sit beside him, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. At some point, the headman brings you tea. You sip it. It tastes like dirt. You don't care. Morning comes, blue and quiet. Birds sing again. The village moves slowly, repairing what it can. You walk to the hill outside the gate, watch the sea far in the distance, still and uncaring. You take the letter from your sleeve, the one meant for your daughter, and press it flat in your palm. You add one more line. I saw the end, and I was still me. You fold it, tuck it away. You return to the village, to Noboru, to whatever comes next. Now the battle is behind you, and the smoke has faded. The fires are out. The blades are clean. What's left is quiet, not the kind of silence that comes from fear, but the soft hush of a place that has survived itself. You sit at the edge of the village, beneath a tree older than any memory you've carried, and you feel the wind for the first time in days, not as a threat, not as a warning, just as something passing through. The sea still waits beyond the hills. The mountains still cast their long shadows, but inside your chest, there's room again to breathe, to simply be. Your body hurts, not the sharp, urgent pain of fresh wounds, but the deep ache of something that has been used and used well. Your fingers tremble as you unwrap the final bandage, inspect the bruises, touch the scars. They're not just wounds. They're proof of time. of endurance, of all the days you didn't think you'd reach. Noboru sleeps nearby, breathing slowly, one hand resting on his sword like it's just another part of him. You don't wake him. You let him rest, because rest, finally, has become possible. The villagers are rebuilding now, quietly, patiently. A fence is mended, a roof retied. The boy you passed yesterday is drawing again in the dirt, something round and clumsy that might be the sun, or a coin, or the world. You watch and say nothing. The story doesn't end here, but for now, it's enough. So take a breath, let your shoulders drop, let your thoughts wander like mist across a valley that no longer needs defending. You've walked far enough for one night. Sleep now. You're still here. That's all that matters.